Really, devil fruit. Captain Sachi, you are so lucky. It should be that group of dark forces are really willing. No wonder this group of guys came to our site specially. I just don't know what kind of fruit it is. After seeing the devil fruit, the pirates of the surrounding Whitebeard pirate group were surprised, but they didn't show jealousy, but looked at Sack with envy and said. Although it is not clear whether the inner thoughts of these pirates are the same as the surface. But it is undeniable that the atmosphere of the Whitebeard pirate group is considered to be the kind with a relatively harmonious relationship among most pirate groups. Devil fruit may be precious, but considering that the other party is the captain of the 4th Division in the rules of the Whitebeard Regiment, naturally everyone will not show the idea of going beyond, unless Sage himself does not want it. Stupid, there are countless devil fruits in the sea, how could anyone know the function of each fruit? Marco dismissed everyone. Just take a look at the devil fruit illustrated book. It's not as rare as devil fruit. Fruit illustrations can still be seen everywhere in the sea, and auction houses often have them, not to mention their background in the Whitebeard group. It doesn't matter what kind of fruit it is, don't you think it's interesting to eat it without knowing it? Ace said with a smile. Hearing this, Saki immediately rolled his eyes at the other party. I think you are making fun of me there. I don't want to become a landlubber because of my unclear ability. Found it. Devil fruit illustration. The pirate holding a book on the side suddenly opened his mouth, then looked at Saki, and said slowly with some indescribable expressions, Captain Saki. The one in your hand seems to be a logia fruit. As soon as the words came out, everyone's expressions changed, and they quickly surrounded them, noticing that the logia dark fruit marked on the book was indeed exactly the same as the one in Sachi's hand. All of a sudden, the envy for Sachi became stronger. It's actually a logia fruit. It seems that another admiral will appear in our Whitebeard pirates. Logia secretly. Dark ability, Sarge, eat it and show us. Want to eat it? Sarge? Ace asked with the same interest. He simply wanted to see what Sarge would become after eating this fruit. I want to think about it. Sage showed a tangled look. Unlike other people, he is a relatively pure pirate, and he is particularly important to 10 things about landlubbers. Isn't that right, Captain Saki? You already know the fruit's ability, so you still need to think about it. This operation surprised many people. If you don't know the fruit ability, it's okay to think about it. Now that it is known, and it is still the top logia in the 3 series, Saki still has to consider it. Saki put the fruit back into the box and said, what are you afraid of? Anyway, the fruit will not run away. Seeing that Saki refolded the fruit, the other captains didn't say anything more after seeing this. But Whitebeard, who had been watching silently, suddenly said, our Whitebeard group has rules, and whoever gets the fruit has the right to decide the fruit. So, Sage, think about it carefully. After all, we are a big family. Whether you choose or not, no one will make things difficult for you. Don't worry, old man, there won't be any idiots on board. Marco followed up. He understands what his father said. The temptation of the logia fruit is too great. It is so big that it will inevitably make people have other thoughts that they should not have on this ship. The words of Whitebeard and Marco really reminded many people of the Iron Law on this ship in their greed, and secretly buried their adventurous thoughts. So, after counting the spoils, all the pirates gathered on the deck to watch also returned to their rooms. With no one around, no one noticed that Teach's greedy gaze was only looking straight at Sachi's room. In fact, from the moment Saki showed the fruit, Teach's expression changed significantly. He didn't even need to use the devil fruit illustration book, he could also directly say the name of the dark fruit. Because this fruit is the fruit he dreamed of, and it is also the reason why he came to the Whitebeard Regiment and hibernated for so long. To be honest, he is planning to wait another 1 or 2 years, and if he can't, he will leave the Whitebeard pirates directly and seek his way of hegemony in another way. On the other hand, with his strength, will definitely be able to create a world in this sea, although it will be much lower than what he has always planned. But unexpectedly, fate made him give him such a big surprise when he was about to give up. Sure enough, the nearly 30 years of waiting was worth it. And it was very coincidental that Saki didn't choose to eat the fruit immediately. This was the trial given to him by fate, and he successfully passed it. Everything is being prepared for him, thief, ha ha ha. Teach chuckled in a low voice. It's no wonder Sarge. So, until the dead of night. Armed with a weapon, Teach's sneaky figure sneaked into Sage's room. On the Moby Dick, no one in the big family is free to use knowledge to perceive family members. Therefore, no one noticed that there was a silent dispute and even a conflict in the room of Team 4 Captain Teach, and then Sage, whose heart was pierced, was silently laid down on the deck. A large pool of blood quickly spread in the room. In Sage's room. What? Teach gasped. Sure enough, the worst thing happened. Damn Sarge. Why didn't he listen to persuasion? Obviously, as long as the fruit is given to him, it is enough for him to leave the Whitebeard pirates. To this point, he has violated the iron law of the Whitebeard ship, and there is no doubt that he will be held accountable afterwards. Thinking of Whitebeard wanting to go berserk, Teach has a bit of a headache. In his plan, even if he got the dark fruit, it would still be too early to fight Dad. But there's nothing we can do now. Teach turned his head to look at the fruit on the table, without any regret in his eyes. As long as you get it, no matter how angry the old man is, it doesn't matter anymore. Then it's time for him to be the Blackbeard to replace Dad. Early the next morning, Moby Dick, no longer the usual happy atmosphere, is now full of seriousness and seriousness. Stop it, Ace. Calm down. My father already said that this time is a special case, and you don't need to investigate it specially. Let me go. There was an angry shout, and Ace tried his best to break free from the pirate family members who were holding him. That guy is my subordinate. If he ignores it, how will the killed sage rest in peace? Seeing the sons who couldn't stop tugging, Whitebeard called out, Ace. As soon as the main heart spoke, the pirate captain who was dissuading him and the angry Ace also stopped their movements. Forget it. Only this time. Although there was unconcealable anger in his eyes, Whitebeard shook his head and said, I have an ominous premonition. Seeing this, Ace said angrily, that guy killed his companion and escaped. After being taken care of by Dad for so many years, it made you lose all face. The most important thing is to damage your father's reputation. How can I just ignore this kind of thing? Nothing breaks Whitebeard's iron code more than a family cannibalism. Even though they have only been together for more than a year, Ace has put everything about Whitebeard in the same important position as Luffy in his heart. I'm here to settle accounts with him. Ace put on his cowboy hat and jumped off the Moby Dick Island. Call out. Blazing flames spewed out from under the feet, and the specially made boat immediately rushed towards the distant sea like an arrow from the string. Despite Marco and others on the boat shouting, Ace left without hearing. Father, I'm going to chase him back. Marco, the only one who has the ability to fly, is ready to go. No need, Marco, let him go. Whitebeard sighed softly. Don't you know Ace's character? Even if you bring him back, he will definitely find a chance to leave. Everyone was dumbfounded. Ace's character was indeed like Mara fruit in a certain way. As long as it was something he decided, it would be difficult to pull it back even if it was pulled by 10 giant bulls. Whitebeard looked at Ace's leaving figure. Maybe it was the trust and favoritism towards Ace, that is, the slight premonition that made Whitebeard silently acquiesce. Damn Teach. Looking at the sad and lonely look of the old man, many family members around gritted their teeth secretly. Of course they knew that Whitebeard had always treated them sincerely, otherwise there wouldn't be so many people willing to call him daddy. Whitebeard's second team captain, Firefist Ace, is dispatched. This is not a clear thing in New World, but if the opponent is traveling alone, the meaning is somewhat vague and mysterious. Firefist Ace, left alone from the Whitebeard pirates. After receiving the news from the direct shadow guard in Whitebeard, Robin immediately reported to Moda. And according to the intelligence description, Firefist's expression along the way was extremely angry and irritable. Everything has already begun to develop towards your plan. The corner of his mouth raised a curve, and Moda laughed. The fuse of this end era has finally begun to ignite. It's just a pity that I can't see with my own eyes the scene where Teach has been planning for many years, but in the end he took smile. Without hiding his bad humor, Robin replied, that is indeed a regrettable thing. I hope he will not collapse and choose to jump into the sea. Even though he didn't have the same experience as the original book when he was a child, he still dabbled in a lot of books as insights, and the influence of Moda, Robin still often easily associates with other people's inauspicious things. Next, do we need to arrange for Run and the others to go to sea to chase Firefist? Robin asked Moda. She knew about Ace's arrangement best. Since that Teach may have a change in strength due to the fruit, it may be necessary to bury another layer of protection. It's up to you to arrange it, but you don't need to be so anxious. Next year is the real beginning of the big event, Moda said. Teach really shouldn't be underestimated. After all, he is also a man who caused harm to the red hair, and such a character who is good at forbearance, will not waste his own strength too much, especially his special physique. But just in case it is necessary, what Moda is worried about is not that Teach can't beat Ace, but whether he will continue to carry out Shichibukai's plan after he finds out that it is not dark fruit. A week later, Firefist Ace has not concealed his whereabouts in New World, and has received a lot of attention for a while. Especially after the news that members of Whitebeard's second team killed the fourth team was exposed, Ace's whereabouts became even more eye-catching. At the same time, daring to violate the iron law of the Whitebeard regiment, or directly killing the captain of the team, such a case made Teach such a name in an uproar in the whole sea. It's just that no one knows that Teach, who has escaped from the Whitebeard Sea area and is famous all over the world, is venting and destroying on a certain isolated island at this moment. He is very smart, knowing that Whitebeard's pursuit will be ordered the next day, especially Ace's reckless personality, so he didn't eat the fruit immediately for night travel. It wasn't until he disappeared, completely left the Whitebeard Sea area and hid on a remote island that he ate the treasure that he had been carrying all along. It's just that as he laughed crazily, the darkness that he dreamed of did not emerge from his body. Instead, his body suddenly underwent structural changes. Backquote, "What's the situation? Isn't this dark fruit?" It was both puzzled and frightened, and he could feel that there were fangs that shouldn't have grown on both sides of his mouth. In this case, it is like an animal fruit, but it's impossible. He has dreamed about the appearance of this fruit for nearly 30 years. How could it be a zone fruit? He couldn't accept it, but until he got to the coast, Teach's mentality finally broke down. Under the refraction of the sun, Teach in the shape of a wild boar is reflected in the sea. On an uninhabited small island. At this moment, because of Blackbeard, who was furious because of his unbalanced mentality, tremors were coming from time to time. As if in a state of being enchanted, Teach, who turned into a wild boar at this time, looks particularly harmonious with his already bloated body and savage face. Boom. With a huge thunderous sound, the rock tens of meters thick was directly shattered by the horn blessed by Teach Hockey. Among other things, the blessing of zone fruit to the body is indeed a real and significant improvement. It is because Whitebeard has been creating a lazy appearance, which leads to a somewhat wasteful physique. Now there is an increase in strength and thickness. But compared with dark fruit, the improvement in various senses is still not at the same level. After almost destroying all the giant rocks that could be destroyed on this island, Teach Fang fell to the ground a little out of breath, and the animal form was released accordingly. No matter how much you vent, these are already established feelings. He has been dormant for nearly 30 years and waited for his dream, but in the end he just got a zone with aggressive wild boar abilities. And besides this devastating blow, there is still a bad situation waiting for him. It was for such a devil fruit, who was not even an ancient species, that he killed Sarge, which annoyed Dad, and was ordered to kill by the Whitebeard regiment. In the end, did lousy end like this? Teach looked up at the sky, as if he was going to be depressed because of this, and then his expression changed. He gritted his teeth and roared at the sky. How is this possible? Lousy will not give in to this ridiculous result. Lousy is the leader of Da clan. Those who want to follow the ultimate treasure. It is not only venting dissatisfaction, but also seems to be reinvigorating himself. People's dreams will never end. This is an idea he has always believed in. What's more, at most, he lost an ability, but he can't have the chance to come back. Apart from the special physique that he has widely circulated that he can hardly fall asleep, few people know that his body is even more structurally abnormal. He teaches a person with 3 souls in one body. Besides himself, there are also his 2 younger sisters. And this also means that he can also choose to have another powerful fruit ability to fill himself. It's just that losing the dark fruit means losing 100% success in depriving Dad of the shock fruit. This is a problem, but compared to these, what should be considered is its own situation, and the Whitebeard group still needs to be completely resolved. He didn't want to spend his future life being hunted down by such a behemoth as the Whitebeard pirates. Since this is the case, we can only change some plans. Teach's original plan was to capture pirates with a bounty of over 100 million and hand them over to the world government in exchange for fame, and become 7 warlords of the sea, protected by the world government to a certain extent, and use this to improve himself for his strength. This is the simplest thing. But now, there's more to being a Shichibukai than just being a Shichibukai. He wants to let the Whitebeard group and the world government go to war in a real sense, and liberate him from the pressure of being hunted down. It is best to let the old man lose it, so that even if he can't actually get the shock fruit, he still has a chance. Sex is not. This idea was born, and Ace, who was rumored to be chasing him, was the best candidate. Teach admits that Ace has high potential and has progressed quickly. He entered the Whitebeard Pirates and has the strength to become the captain in just 2 years. But he also has weaknesses. The first is his reckless personality. The second is that he relies too much on the Logia fruit. Hockey is not so much a grandmaster, and Teach himself, although he does not have a high opinion of his own hockey, but he is confident that he can deal with Ace. It can be done. After making up his mind, Teach quickly cheered up and was ready to start the first half of the plan to select forces. Of course, there is one more point, regarding the abnormality of dark fruit. He has also considered it in C. He didn't believe that he had misremembered the situation, and he didn't think that there could be 2 fruits with the same shape in the world, so it was likely that someone did it on purpose. Combined with the source of this fruit, Teach also does not believe that it was done by some dark force. After all, they would not dare to trouble such a behemoth as the Air General. So the result is very clear, the culprit of all this is the Flying Kingdom. Only they have such technology, so the so-called dark fruit was deliberately used by the other party to frame the Whitebeard group, and it just happened that he may have voluntarily bumped into this trap and became an innocent person. And since a zone fruit is made in the shape of dark fruit, it means that dark fruit itself is in the Flying Kingdom. In any case, the pig was completely on the fence with the Flying Kingdom. But he also has self-knowledge. For now, he is not qualified to collide with that behemoth. So I can only say that I gritted my teeth and endured it, and I will solve the troubles of the Whitebeard group first. It's just that a person's life is still very long. Just wait and see. Flying General, one day he will pull that high-ranking big man into the sea, and give 100-fold revenge as repayment. Teach's thoughts surged wildly in his heart, and then he started to walk to the snatched boat on the shore and headed towards the sea. Therefore, while escaping from Ace's pursuit, but also in order to pull the opponent into the hard-to-reach area of the Whitebeard group, Teach entered the first half of the Grand Line, revealing his whereabouts from time to time. In this way, half a year passed quickly, stabilized at the end and the beginning of a new chapter in history. See Circle Calendar 1520. The time is firmly fixed at See Circle Calendar 1520. In this turbulent era, it is obviously because of the conscription by the world government that the situation in the world has stabilized again. But it seemed to usher in a sudden explosion at a certain critical point. Compared with previous years, a large number of vicious newcomers to the Grand Line suddenly emerged from various sea areas and gained a strong reputation. That is, during this period. East blew. It was afternoon and the climate was warm. The beginning of all destiny is also the coming of the end of the era. Kingdom of Goa, on the coast of Windmill Village. Luffy, come on. Luffy, be careful when you go out to sea. Luffy must take care of himself, don't catch a cold. Almost all the villagers were piled up on the bank, scrambling to tell the boy wearing a straw hat on the boat. This is the hometown of the attention-grabbing marine hero Garp. For Luffy, Garp's grandson who grew up here, the simple villagers naturally love him very much. Oh. I see. Wearing a small red shirt, blue half-leg jeans, and straw sandals, Luffy waved goodbye to the villagers with an optimistic smile. Sending away the strong rope on the boat began to follow the current and gradually move forward towards the sea ahead. Hey, Sabo, I'm going to sea now too. You are the first, Ace is the second, and I am the third, but I will definitely catch up with Ace. Shouted Luffy from the boat. La. It seemed that they heard someone's high-spirited sea. The originally calm sea suddenly churned up, and the waves became bigger and bigger. Soon, a huge snake-shaped sea king protruded out of the sea, staring fiercely at Luffy on the boat with sharp teeth and fangs. It's the king of the offshore. Luffy, be careful. Come back, Luffy. Seeing this, the villagers all yelled anxiously in worry. The sharp contrast between the two bodies alone was enough to make them tremble with fear. It is you. Instead of running away immediately as the villagers shouted, Luffy stood up, moved his arms, and lowered the straw hat with a cold face. Rubber. The right hand swung back violently, and the arm was pulled back by the rubber power for a distance of more than 10 meters, and then suddenly used the retracted impact to punch the king of the sea with great force. Pistol. Ochaku near the sea was smashed upside down by a strong force, and after falling back to the sea surface, a huge wave was created, and then quickly escaped from the bottom of the sea. Good. Awesome. Defeated the king of the sea with one blow. Dayton and others, who hid behind the house to see Luffy off, were shocked by this strength together with the villagers on the shore. After defeating the king of the sea who almost killed himself, Luffy smiled, clenched his hands above his head, and shouted firmly, One Piece, I'm determined. With the travel of the Child of Destiny, the waves of the times are piled up like a tsunami. The first half of the Grand Line. Naval Headquarters, Marlene Vando. Marine Admiral Sengoku was flipping through the thick stack of reports on the table with a disturbed expression on his face. With great power comes great responsibility. As the current highest commander of Marine, it can be said that almost every week there are more than 5 days, and he needs to process and review various documents reported by Marine. Because oppressing the 4 seas in the first half of the Grand Line, the sea area of New World gathers the most elite group of pirates in this era, and the news about these alone accounts for half of the report. Of course, if it's not like this in normal times, it's also thanks to the fact that Garp's grandson traveled alone. Almost every place he appears in has a dozen or so emotional analysis about G. After all, the other party's status is now the captain of the Whitebeard Pirates' second team, and it's weird to travel alone. Even with the passage of time, Marine will pay special attention to it. In addition to the first time, another reason is that many troublesome newcomer pirates suddenly broke out in the 4 seas. Like the high-profile gang leader of the West Blue Boys, and the particularly troublesome Princess Bonnie of the Bell Kingdom. The latter is the most annoying reason for Sengoku Marshal Sengoku, besides the many affairs. After all, he is the princess of the allied country, and her father Beisorumu Akuma still plays a more important role than Shichibukai. That's why I said, the trouble of promotion and so on is dead, feel it now, Yan. The constant noise of snacks on the side, and Garp pretending to be relaxed at the same time, can also be regarded as one of the reasons why Sengoku is upset now. It's not because of your grandson, Garp. Sengoku couldn't bear to slap the table and stood up. If you can persuade the other party to become Shichibukai, I might be able to relax a lot. Now the other party is the captain of the 2nd Division, running around the world like a thorn in the sea. Do you know what you brought? What an impact. And when this was mentioned, Garp immediately turned his head aside as if admitting his cowardice, deliberately acting as if he didn't know anything. At this time, Vice Admiral, the chief of staff with gray hair and wrinkled face, walked in from outside. The three of them were all companions at the same time at that time, and they didn't need to go through a special form of greeting when they came in and out. Garp is also there, so I don't need to make a special trip to find you. Holding a few newspapers in his hand, he looked at the two people who were making a fuss. What's the matter, Crane? Seeing this, Sengoku calmed down and looked at the person who walked in. There's another tricky newcomer on the Grand Line, and I felt compelled to show you. You have a lot to do with Garp too. It's really troublesome. What's going on this year? Sengoku rubbed his temples. If Suru could find him specially, it must be the birth of another troublesome guy. So he looked at the information spread out on the table, and only to this extent would he, as a marshal, pay special attention to it. The first to bear the brunt was a boy wearing a straw hat. Looking at the straw hat, Sengoku looked familiar. It seems that Luo Jia and Shanks both wore the same straw hats. Until he saw the name introduced in the intelligence. Monkey D. Luffy. Sengoku froze for a moment, then his face turned black. An angry roar came from the marshal's office again. Garp, you bastard. This is second. Also unable to accept this message, was Garp himself, who hugged his head and shouted, Luffy, you bastard. The pirates who offered a reward of 30 million Baileys are like Crucian carp crossing the river in this era, and they don't seem so outstanding. Even if the so-called East Blue is the strongest, in the Grand Line, it is just a faint character who has not stepped into the ranks of supernovas. For the so-called strongest rookie in East Blue, most people just glanced at the person on the wanted list with a little interest, and didn't pay much attention to it. But this doesn't mean everyone. No one could believe that this arrest warrant was attracting the attention of a few big figures in the world today. Luffy, have you set sail yet? Located in Red Force, the red-haired Shanks looked at the wanted warrant in his hand, with an excited smile on his lips. This not only means that the child he cares about has grown into a qualified adventurer, but also reminds that the new world he is looking forward to, and the change Captain Luo Jia once longed for, is getting closer. Captain 583, Rockstar, is approaching Whitebeard's waters. Putting down the arrest warrant in his hand, Shanks returned to seriousness and said, let's also set off for the Whitebeard waters, we have to talk about Ace now. In the sea area near the capital of Seven Waters, a small boat is advancing rapidly on the sea. But it is different from the current wind direction or the ship structure of the power structure. The flames gushed out from the stern of the boat, giving the boat a strong power through energy blessing, allowing the boat to rush across the sea like a rocket. Damn Teach, I finally let me figure out your general sailing direction, let's see how you hide this time. On the small boat, Ace, with his upper body naked and a large skull pattern on his back, made every move. Although it is difficult to find one in the sea, he was lucky enough to get some directional information through the description of Teach. And with a clear direction, it is easier to know the area where the other party is going through the approximate route. But also because of the Whitebeard pattern on the back and my identity as the captain of the second team, I can easily find the desired information in any tavern where pirates are rampant. Is it this direction? Ace looked at the chart in his hand and the compass on his wrist, looking at a route in the Grand Line from afar. Kindness? Ace raised his head suddenly. In the sky, a big bird flew over his head, as if it had discovered his small boat, it lowered its head and flew towards this side. Newsbird? It's just right, then give me a copy. Ace fumbled in his trouser pocket and took out a few coins. Although he ate all the Overlord meals along the way, he had to pay for the newspaper before taking it. Ace didn't have much contact with such things as newspapers, but now is a special period for tracking. Thinking that there may be news about Teach, Ace still bought a copy. Of course, the more important thing is that he combined the days and calculated the time. The nearest time should be his younger brother Luffy's sailing time. At the moment when the newspaper was unfolded, the wanted warrant attached to each issue slipped from the interlayer. He hurriedly bent down to pick it up, but after noticing the portrait of the wanted warrant on the board, Ace's pupils contracted. Looking at the boy wearing a straw hat and smiling brightly, Ace showed an excited look. "Luffy, you guys are finally out to sea." Ace quickly bent down to pick up the wanted warrant, and browsed through the information below. "Ha ha ha, the bounty is 30 million Baileys, not bad. He is indeed my younger brother, but I don't know how much stronger he is now. It's almost near Alabasta now." Ace put his big hand on the hat on his head, and hooked the corner of his mouth upwards. "I happened to be on the way, and I met that kid Luffy after a long time." Call. The small boat staying on the sea surface, under the injection of flames, instantly turned into a sharp arrow off the string, galloping away towards the distance. Flying Kingdom, Sky Coast. Moda also learned of this information firsthand. Looking at the arrest warrant, a smile appeared on his face. Of course, it's not about being happy or happy about the protagonist's experience in this matter. But because the end of all plans is near, Hancock in the bikini next to him is also the boy in the straw hat who read more of the same newspaper. Partly because Moda smiled, and partly because Moda said that this is a pawn capable of bringing the world into turmoil. But after she showed the degree of taking a second look, she posted to Moda again in the manner of a couple. All the men in the world, in the eyes of the proud Hancock, are nothing more than a smoky generation, and only Moda can make her express the most enthusiastic style besides glamorous. Of course, this is limited to men, and for women, Hancock still has emotions other than indifference. For example, now, except for being next to Moda, she has a dissatisfied and angry expression on Maria, who occupies a very large position, and at the same time, her eyes indicate Shirahoshi on the side. It seems to be saying to Maria, "It would be nice to learn how cute Shirahoshi is, and be a mermaid princess quietly by the side." It's just that Maria turned a blind eye to it. She knew her biggest advantage. Often when she was in a swimsuit, Master Moda would like her more. Seeing Maria's ignorance, Hancock could only grit his teeth and feel a little anxious. Now Yamato is taking the initiative to accompany Jun on their overseas expeditions, and this is also the period when Hancock is most aggressive. Because every time this time comes, she really wants to take advantage of Yamato's absence, kill some people, and then come back to show off to her rival. It's just so many times, but there is still no obvious response. This is true of the elder sister Shi, the chief steward who followed Mr. Moda for the longest time, and even the three daughters Lilith, the chief maidservant earlier. Of course, Hancock didn't take the initiative to say more, considering that the situation might be caused by Mr. Moda. He could only use crazy actions as a hint. And that's exactly what Hancock thought it would be. Moda himself is not in a hurry, because whether it is pure gold or even immortal surgery, Moda has enough time, and this is also true for the beauties he has. Compared to these, what he wants to see more now is the unfolding of the Summit War. So, Moda looked at the blonde figure who was lying on her back on the pool bed, applying sunscreen lotion like a lady. "Stussy." Hearing Moda call, Stussy stopped smearing, and then raised his sunglasses. "What's the matter, my dear general? You haven't reported the results to me yet." Hearing this, Stussy showed coquettishness and twisted her body. "Isn't this intended to be used as a bargaining chip at night, and I want to be alone with you for a while, sir." It's a bit like an old tree blooming. Since knowing what's in her heart and how Moda moved her, Stussy has become more and more aggressive. Even the jealous Hancock and the others don't care about it. After all, they can even betray the world government that has trained her for several years. But having said that, Stussy went on to say the information Moda wanted. 5 elders have given instructions. Blackbeard wants to become Shichibukai, must capture Fire Fist Ace alive. And they're ready for an all-out war with Whitebeard. Although all deeds develop according to his own expectations and designs, after all, this big event that will dominate the world is planned by him. Naturally, he will not let go of any exact information, so as to avoid any unexpected mistakes, even with this probability very small. Now that the exact Summit War preparations are obtained, Moda only needs to wait for the arrival of this big event. So, continue to recklessly drive a party like life in the Flying Kingdom and revel in it. It's just a pity that the little guys who have grown into young and beautiful girls are not in the Flying Kingdom at the moment, which makes Moda feel that the youthful atmosphere of the past is missing. Of course, Ah Shi and the others beside him disagreed. Whether it is Ah Shi or Ah Ren, or even Stussy who has special maintenance methods, they have gradually concealed the problem of age on purpose. It is the nature of a woman, and it is also the change of mentality brought about by the growth of pure gold. Pure gold can almost stop the passage of human age, but the world's time will not change at all. Under Moda's still extravagant pace of life, another month passed. As Moda said, Luffy is a chess piece that can bring the world into turmoil. In just 1 month, this restless son of the world made a lot of noise again. The civil war in Alabasta, which had been turbulent for a long time, stopped, and the sand crocodile, one of the Shichibukai, was exposed to a conspiracy to seize the country, and was also defeated by that Straw Hat Luffy. The long-known sand crocodile was defeated by a fledgling pirate rookie. Did you hear that? It happened a few days ago. A newcomer from East Blue again. I remember that the last Fire Fist who defeated Shichibukai for the first time was also from East Blue. Before I didn't believe that a pirate would become a national hero. In the end, he was not a thief who coveted the country. This is the Shichibukai specially allowed by the world government, the one who was once defeated by the Fire Fist, and it is also a town whose life is in dire straits. In the sea, the facts that cannot be concealed have swept the world through the World Economic News. Regarding the incident of Alabasta and Crocodile, the entire sea was already in an uproar between the whistling. However, with the overwhelming tide of the times, this kind of big incident will only increase and become stronger. The aftermath of this event, in addition to causing heated discussions about Shichibukai and East Blue newcomers, bear the brunt, is marine and world government. After all, 7 warlords of the sea, although they are pirates, but as a cooperating FA high thief, they are more on the side of the world government, and their relationship with marine can also be regarded as a cooperative relationship. Naturally, the lackey of the government has been described quite appropriately. Redline, Mariajoy. Among the powers with luxurious decoration, 5 elders gathered here. Morgans, that guy, has already announced the news first. In normal times, it is common for Morgans to be bribed with money for unfavorable news from the world government. As a result, when the world government first learned about the scandal this time and wanted to use the news to bribe Morgans, the newsbird had already spread the latest news to the world. The negative news of the big event here is really not small. It not only magnifies the scope of the disadvantages of the Shichibukai policy, but also makes the recent bad news, so it has been dealt a heavy blow. That guy. Let's not talk about it now, we still need to rely on the situation of his news agency. And this incident, in the final analysis, is the trouble caused by this Straw Hat Kid. In the discourse, not a single word was mentioned about what Crocodile did. The sand crocodile is naturally aware of Alabasta's ultimate goal, Pluton, and the world government, which defaults to the other party's behavior. Pluton is also the goal of the world government. It is just the design of the capital of 7 waters, and CP has been dormant for many years. And in the final analysis, this is just taking advantage of the sand crocodile, and even Alabasta has a historical text recording Pluton information, which they let the CP organization deliberately disclose. Of course, they don't think that the other party has the ability to interpret the historical text. What they want is to let the other party get the historical text, and then destroy or hide it afterwards. It's just that these plans were blocked by an unexpected figure. The rookie who didn't even master hockey actually defeated the sand crocodile. Is he worthy of being the son of Drago? 5 elders with a long white beard said seriously, with a somewhat cold tone. First a revolutionary army, and now a pirate. Garp's bloodline is really going further and further away. Although complaining, the 5 elders did not continue to trouble Garp. Just because of his performance in the Valley of the Gods, the marine hero definitely has a high status among celestial dragons. It doesn't matter much, and now we can only rely on the next big battle to completely get back these rumors. It's really a bunch of troublemakers. Shichibukai's disadvantages appeared too early, and the Seraph project is just approaching the critical experimental moment of factor loading. During this period, they need to use their power. That's right, and we still need to prepare for the next big battle. That fellow Blackbeard is capable of catching Luo Jia's son. From the collected information, they know that this guy is also a hidden ruthless character, and the 3 scars on the red-haired face are the result of his battle. What's more, just in case, the 5 elders let the CPO secretly assist them. Due to various factors, there is no reason why they can't win a Fire Fist ace. Food City in the first half of the Grand Line. This is also a very prosperous capital city, where delicacies from all over the world gather in one city, which is comparable to the desert island of the Flying Kingdom inheriting the original Toto land. And this island is also connected with the capital of 7 waters by the world's most advanced sea train. Cars can go from this island to the city of the Queen of Spring, and then take a car to the capital of 7 waters. Compared with travel tasks, it is a journey that focuses on play. At this time, one of Moda's trump cards, Reki Yamato, is gathering here with a group of new generation retainers. Excellent. Yamato sat at one of the tables in the gourmet restaurant, obviously a cold and sexy beauty, but shouted boldly. At the same time, holding the chopsticks in the right hand, he kept sending the ramen in the bowl to his mouth, and holding the fork in the left hand, stuffing a few octopus balls from time to feast his mouth. This octopus ball, and this char shao ramen made with Sea King's meat. It's even more delicious than the chefs in the palace, and this juice. Come and try it. It seemed that it was because of the invitation from Yamato's status, or because of Yamato's obsessive food. Nami and others also took their seats one by one. Soon he began to taste it, and when he really noticed that the taste was good, his eyes lit up, and the speed of eating was also accelerated a lot. Byrnndi even snatched half of Peggy Wan's meatballs while eating. Peggy Wan couldn't help being speechless, and turned his head to look aside. As the big brother, Luo even took the initiative to give Lami a taste of the delicious food, and then looked back at his sister. Just as he was about to speak, he was greeted with stares like a prophet. After that, he immediately swallowed the words in a confession. After tasting it for a while, Zoro suddenly said, "I'm a little thirsty, and I feel that the juice is still not satisfying. I better go out and find a drink." It's just that he didn't walk for long, and was immediately hit by Nami's critical blow to the ground, and then angrily grabbed Zoro's collar and shook it. "Zoro, as I said, anyone can do it, but you are not allowed walk around. I don't even think about how much trouble you have caused us." "That's right," Rami said with his hips on his hips. "Zoro, you guy, you disappeared in a blink of an eye. You can go in the streets of a small town 3 times. As he spoke, he couldn't help but rubbed his forehead. It's really a terrifying talent for Liu Kai. Listening to his sister's words, Luo Yi nodded and agreed. "Indeed, this is an area that is difficult for me to detect with my whole life of medical skills. This guy is hopeless." Luo is now equivalent to a new generation of outstanding medical troops in the Flying Kingdom. From what he said, the term, lifelong medical skills, is enough to imagine what level it is. Zoro couldn't help but turn red when he heard the words. Although he felt very upset in his heart, he didn't have any reason to refute. His road-crazy attributes were often manifested when he was a child, especially in the complex and high-end general city. If there were not maids patrolling everywhere, it is not certain that Zoro might be trapped in the general city for the rest of his life. Of course, Luo's words were not what annoyed him the most, but Perona, who suddenly hugged his legs tightly and covered his mouth with one hand, who was silently holding oil and water. Even this guy Luo said there's no way to save him, then Zoro will be a complete idiot all his life. Perona looked at Zoro with teary eyes. "Looking at you now, my heart is about to break, it's so pitiful, come on. Hey. Enough is enough." This kind of sympathy and encouragement still made Zoro roar out of defense, and even the guests at the side retreated. Besides, it doesn't matter what these things are, it's more important to finish Master Moda's task as soon as possible. What a blunt change of subject. Everyone couldn't help complaining. Kuina, who was drinking juice, agreed with Zoro's words. Zoro's words are also reasonable. We have also played for a while, and it is better to complete the master's task as soon as possible. There's no need to rush, Kuina. Baby 5 said. Master Moda agrees that we can play casually before the big event occurs. And it will take only a few days to get to the capital of 7 waters here, Nuokagao added. This statement got Byrnndi's frantic nod of approval. Although it was a mission, it was hard to travel, especially the various entertainment facilities developed nearby due to the sea train. Byrnndi and others wanted to play for a few more days. There are not only some special delicacies that have not yet been popularized in the Flying Kingdom, but also some beautiful new clothes, etc. As a girl who is in her youth, her shopping desire will of course be significantly increased. Seeing that Kuina didn't continue talking, Zoro also sat back on his seat, drinking the drink that Luo brought him. Peggy Wan, who was on the side, wanted to use this to say something, but seeing the scene like this, he immediately misfired go down. Except for Luo, who is willing because of Rami, he and Zoro are the vitality of things. At the same time, a sea area not far from the food city. When an octopus bulges into a balloon shape, the octopus at the lower end supports a small and medium-sized wooden sailboat, slowly passes through the clouds and lands towards the sea. This is the specialty of Sky Island, octopus hot air balloon. The pirates who have reached the Sky Island all return to Qinghai with this thing. At this time, the pirate ship under the octopus hot air balloon is the Straw Hat Gang's Mei Li. This is amazing. I didn't expect that Sky Island really existed. Replacing Nami in the original book, the male navigator named Hughes said with a smile on his face. It's an adventure, but with long ears you shouldn't be leaving Sky Island for the first time, says Luffy's new buddy next to him in a straw hat. Who do you think has long ears? Enel shouted dissatisfied, you are from Qinghai. Although there have been conflicts, you should call him the captain now. Well, I can't say it, so let's just call him by his name. Sanji couldn't help covering his face as he said. At this time, because there is no boatman, Usopp, who is temporarily working as a boatman, turned his head and shouted, the damage to the Luffy Mei Li is a bit serious, and I have to go to the island for repairs. Really? Then Hughes, please. Luffy giggled. Hughes rolled his eyes, feeling that he was following an extremely unreliable captain, and then he glanced at the permanent pointer on his wrist before slowly saying, I remember that the next island should be the world's largest shipbuilding. It should be the capital of the 7 waters of the island, where the Melidian should be able to be repaired. A few days later, the first half of the Grand Line, the capital of 7 waters. You can see the huge dock from the outside. Is this the largest shipbuilding island in the world? Taking the sea train, the group of Yamato, who was on a mission, looked at the position of the gradually approaching island, and said with surprise. Although it is not at all comparable to the fantasy of the Flying Kingdom, it is the first time to come to such a place after all. Nami and others are still attracted by the charm of this unique island. Especially after connecting to the sea train, the prosperity of this island has increased several times in one breath, and it can be regarded as the world's leading trading city. There should be a lot of novel clothing here. Nami looked at the capital of 7 waters. In addition to collecting maps, sea area weather and other information, clothes are also one of the reasons for her to go out and play. After all, even Lord Moda praised her for her clothes. Wearing sunglasses and a mask, Karina nodded and said, because of the sea train, there are also brand stores from many countries here. The clothes I gave you last time were found here. As a famous singer in the world today, Karina is on tour from time to time, but there is a city including the capital of 7 waters. Compared to these, the shipbuilding industry should rank the top here. Luo looked at the women who were gradually discussing this, and couldn't help but sweat. Big brother, you don't understand girls' thoughts. Lami showed a small expression of disgust, which somewhat shocked Luo, who loved his sister. This group of guys can't understand a girl's mind better than Mrs. Moda. Pudding added a knife appropriately, making Luo shut his mouth wisely. Kuina smiled, turned around and reminded the rest of the team, in this case, let's split into 2 groups. The event task this time is very simple, that is, to get the Pluton design drawings. According to the investigation of the Shadow Guards, the design blueprints are now in the hands of the leader of a team of gangsters, and people of this level are not exaggerated. Even Lami, Pudding, and Nuokagao, the weakest in the team, can easily solve the opponent. No, those little bastards can be dealt with quickly. Nami shook his head and said, let's solve it together at once. Otherwise, it will be less fun to play in 2 teams. You guys just want us to continue to carry your bags conveniently. Peggy's words pierced Nami's real thoughts. To this, Nami did not refute, and blinked with a smile, as if she had such an intention, especially because she mobilized the minds of the girls around her, so there was no possibility of Peggy Wan and others refusing. There was no need to inquire. The Shadow Guards had already given accurate information in advance, and after everyone arrived at the capital of 7 waters, they walked directly towards Frankie's house near the shipwreck on the coast. At this time, Frankie's family has been found in trouble. Although there are some differences from the original book, Frankie did not go out but sat on his own territory, but Straw Hat Crew came here specially to make a big fuss because he robbed Usopp of the ship repair fund accumulated. So when Yamato and others came to the vicinity of the shipwreck, the surrounding area was full of Frankie boys who were blown out and fell into a coma. With this posture, it seems that someone has rushed ahead of us. Zoro swept to sweep the gangsters on the floor, and then looked into it, and sensed that there were 5 people inside. After a few people walked into Frankie's house without any scruples, the Straw Hat Crew who heard the footsteps inside couldn't help but look out. As if his head had an automatic recognition system, Sanji directly ignored the 3 men, Zoro, Luo, and Peggy Wan, and fell into a frantic yell. Wow! It's a group of charming ladies. Lang Yan Yuji, gothic beauties, and all kinds of young and beautiful ladies and sisters. Is this heaven? With such emotions in his mind, before he even had time to introduce himself, Sanji couldn't bear such a terrifying impact and fell to the ground with red eyes in his eyes. Hey, Sanji, are you alright? Seeing this, Chopper on the side quickly came to Sanji's side, and desperately greeted him. As if shaken awake by Chopper, Sanji immediately saw his companions, and a stronger sense of loneliness surged from the bottom of his heart. Because he realized again that their Straw Hat pirates are all men, not even a single beautiful lady crew member. Sanji couldn't help covering his face in pain and said, it's okay. It's just that it's hard for me to accept this cruel reality now. Damn it. Another group of guys bullying my partner. Luffy, who met Frankie through a fight, saw this, and the sensitive nerves raised by the previous Usopp were triggered by this, and he clenched his fists with dissatisfaction and shouted. Obviously that's not the case. Hughes and Chopper immediately yelled at Luffy. Who are you guys? Enel turned to Yamato and the others who came forward, ignoring the companions of these creatures. The tone was not good. Although the 2 parties didn't know each other well, looking at Yamato, Enel always felt a sense of rejection that he didn't know how to explain. Hey, treat these beautiful ladies, be polite with your long ears. Sanji, who couldn't get back to normal after being shaken by Chopper, immediately straightened up and stared at Enel with a serious face. Immediately afterwards, there was another gorgeous and smooth movement, and he ran to Lamy and others and performed a kneeling knight salute. Beautiful lady, I am the chef Sean of the Straw Hat Pirates. Bang. Sanji, who hadn't said anything about playing, was slapped by Byrnndi and flew aside. The terrifying force even made the former slam into the waste pile beside him without any resistance. I don't care who you are. Byrnndi glanced at the other people in the room. I just want to know who is Frankie? Hearing this, the rest of the Straw Hats all looked at the pervert behind Luffy, and even Sanji, who stood up, gritted his teeth jealously at the pervert reformer. Is that you, Uncle Pervert? Byrnndi stared at him. And Frankie, who was not ashamed of the word pervert, was proud of it, pointing to himself and said, yes, it's me. Your vision is surprisingly good. So you have the Pluton design in your body. Knowing that this is not a confidential task, Runfu said directly without concealing it. Frankie, who also wanted to answer subconsciously, suddenly realized something, and his face changed suddenly. Where did you get the information from? The only one who knew was his senior brother Bingshan, and when the other party said this suddenly, he couldn't help but suspect that the current Bingshan might be in danger. So Frankie raised his arm, and spread his palm directly into a cannon. Are you people from the world government? Don't even think about it, I won't hand it over to you even if I die. As soon as the words fell, it was as if a swift and fierce gust of wind flashed past the Straw Hat crew. Byrnndi, who was still tens of meters away, had already come to Frankie in the blink of an eye. Even under the shock of the opponent's unresponsiveness, he directly punched the opponent's chest. The sudden change immediately changed the faces of the members of the Straw Hats, and even Sanji lost the previous fascination. After hitting Frankie's chest accurately and holding the Pluton blueprint in his hand at the same time, he let Frankie collapse unbelievably. Byrnndi shook the blueprint in his hand and walked back happily. Hey, Frankie? You bastard. Call out. The sudden sound of breaking through the air suddenly came from behind. At the moment captured by the knowledgeable color, Byrnndi dodging a constantly elongated and rapidly impacting fist. This pervert should have nothing to do with you. The irritable temper made Byrnndi stare directly. Could it be that you want to fight? Who said it's okay? He's my friend. You bastard, I'll definitely beat you up. Luffy stared back unceremoniously, and the anger was also full of it. Although they bullied Usopp, after understanding and chatting with various display machines, Luffy already regarded him as a friend, and even wanted to make him his companion. Although he is usually generous, as long as he bullies his companions or makes his friends cry, Luffy will never forgive them lightly. Chopper. After hearing Luffy's angry shout, Chopper, the ship's doctor, rushed to Frankie's side, hurriedly inspected it, and then said, this guy is a modified person. How can I treat it? But it seems that except for the mechanical part, he was seriously injured. Other than that, there doesn't seem to be much of a problem. Luffy breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this, but his clenched fist did not loosen at all. Also sensing his own captain's emotions, Hughes immediately raised his hand to block Luffy. Don't rush Luffy, these guys are the Four Emperors team. Hughes looked at the group of people in front of him. Just now, he saw two prominent letter marks on some of them. Although these two symbols may not mean much to the news-blind members of the Straw Hats, as a navigator, Hughes, who often learns about current affairs through newspapers, knows what these two letters represent. The Four Emperors' forces of New World, a flying kingdom with both dreams and strength. It seems that there are still smart people in this ignorant team. Peggy Wan, who was also wearing a mask, nodded, and finally became a backup force. Yan. Four Emperors. Hearing this, Luffy looked at Byrnndi more seriously. If that's the case, then I can't back down even more. I'm the man who wants to be the One Piece. For Four Emperors, Luffy still has a certain understanding. The reason is because of the popular science that Ace told him when he was a child. The four strongest forces at the end of the Grand Line, only by defeating them can the group become the One Piece. He doesn't know who the Four Emperors are, but he only needs to remember that defeating these four can become One Piece, and that's enough. Rubber pistol. Luffy clenched a fist in one hand and threw it back violently, relying on the stretched rebound speed. The attack with the speed of a pistol quickly hit Run's wife. After being predicted in advance by the color of knowledge, Byrnndi easily turned her head to avoid the attack, and at the same time directly grabbed the extended arm beside her head. The powerful and terrifying power directly made Luffy fly towards Byrnndi uncontrollably because of contraction. No matter what king it is, only Master Moda is qualified to match four in the world. Where can I get you, a poor and extremely garden guy? Condensed with the destructive degree of the high-level emission, with the sound of piercing through the air, Byrnndi slammed heavily on the head of Luffy while cursing. The ground trembled violently. The pothole covering more than 10 meters was instantly blasted out by Byrndi's punch, and even the surrounding buildings of Frankie's house were directly blown away under the terrifying vigor. Smoke and dust filled the air, and gravel splashed. Full of contempt, she shook her hand. Byrnndi withdrew her movement, looked at the straw hat whose eyes were white and completely fainted, and snorted. At this level, he dares to say that he is going to be some kind of king. She didn't even use her abilities. Using the freezing attribute of Deco Genshin, she can also make the battle end instantly, but rather than using the freezing, she wants to use the power of the materialization to count 10 punches for the opponent. In addition, she knew that the guy in the straw hat in front of her had something to do with the adult's plan, otherwise it would not be as simple as punching him down and just unconscious. The end of the battle was unexpectedly fast. Luffy. Seeing this, Enel immediately hit Run's daughter-in-law with a stick-like weapon at high speed. Clang. The attack was easily blocked by Peggy Wan, who stepped forward. How is it possible? Enel's pupils narrowed sharply, and he couldn't help shouting. His attack was so strong that even steel could be bent with one stick, yet the opponent just raised his hand and blocked it unscathed. Ah! You bastard, how dare you hit my brother? Byrnndi, who had already stopped, condensed her strength and hockey again, roaring towards the opponent's abdomen. The speed was so fast that even Enel, who had used the color perception in advance, could not avoid it. Boom. It was like the low hum of an air explosion. There is no strength to knock into the air, but the strength completely crushes the opponent's body. Bang dang. The stick in his hand fell directly to the ground. Enel lost consciousness and collapsed to the ground. Byrnndi, who used to be like a Tyrannosaurus female, turned into an ordinary girl again after defeating Enel, hugging Peggy Wan with a smile. Little Pei. Sure enough, my sister doesn't love you for nothing. Looking at the siblings, Kuina said, since the things are in hand, there is no need for unnecessary disputes. Immediately afterwards, he looked at the 3 members of the Straw Hats who were still awake at this time. I think you all think so. Chopper and Hughes immediately nodded desperately, but only Sanji stared at Kuina with a serious face and remained silent. In fact, except for Lamy, anyone in the team could defeat these 3. It's just that each has their own ideas. Nami and the others may not want to affect the mood of shopping because of the shot, while Zoro Yamato and the others are simply bored by the opponent's weak strength. If there is a swordsman among them, the former may still will take the initiative to 10 o'clock. Until the other party all left, after a long distance. Hughes and Chopper panted heavily just now, as if they couldn't bear the pressure they had been accumulating before. They sat directly on the ground. It's all right, Sanji. Hughes couldn't help but said to his companion who was still watching the other party's leaving direction. It's okay. It's just that the beauty is a bit like the marine adjutant lady that Alabasta was chasing after us just now. After a few more glances, I couldn't help but be addicted to it. Sanji couldn't help but say while smoking a cigarette. You bastard. Chopper immediately bit the opponent's thigh angrily, and then immediately checked Enel and Luffy's injuries, and of course Usopp, who was lying on the ground a long time ago. It wasn't until after staying in the capital of 7 Waters for another 2 or 3 days, and after almost buying all the famous shops in the capital of 7 Waters, that the members of the mission team left this famous shipbuilding place. And it wasn't until the people watching the Flying Kingdom left that the CP9 organization, which had deliberately kept its own law and order in the past few days, was dispatched again. Especially after getting the exact information from Stussy, the design drawings of Pluton have been obtained by this group of people. In order to make amends to a certain extent, Chief Spandam immediately ordered the fighters to arrest Bingberg and Frankie and return them to Eni's lobby. Although the direction of development is not the same as in the original book, the Straw Hats still boarded the sea train and headed towards Eni's lobby. Roughly everything happened as the Eni's lobby incident in the original book. Not only was the Eni's lobby destroyed, but the Straw Hats made a move to break through the world government flag. There was only a discrepancy during September 17th, because there was an extra episode like Enel. Luffy not only understood the second and third gears in the battle, but also had the talent to master the Heartnet in the battle, thus defeating Lu Chi. Less than a month after the Alabasta incident, the Straw Hat Pirates became famous in the world again. At the same time, the reward order of Captain Luffy still increased from 100 million Baileys to 300 million Baileys. Grand Line. Banero Island. On some dilapidated streets, a group of 4 people plus a sickly white horse walked leisurely among them. Thief, ha ha ha, they really did something amazing. Look. At this time, Teach, who has been nicknamed Blackbeard, looked at the newspaper spread out in his hand and laughed, and then photographed it to his companions. It's news about the Straw Hat Boys. It is reported that they captured Eni's lobby, and the reward it actually soared to 300 million berry. It's really a farewell day, and we need to look at it differently. Before in Mogu Town, he was just a brat with 30 million Baileys. Speaking of Eni's lobby, it is very close to the 7 Waters and not far from here. This is another kind of fate. Teach couldn't help laughing again when he heard Van Oka's words. It's just that the master billionaire can be used as the funds for our actions for a long time. Why ha ha ha, since that's the case, let's go, Captain. Don't worry, we still need to wait for someone before that. Blackbeard waved his hand, rejecting the crew's proposal. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from above the eaves. Hey, wait. Teach, I've been looking for you for a long time. Teach, who was walking, couldn't help but stop when he heard this, and looked over. Seeing Ace, Teach first showed surprise on his face, and then showed a joyful and malicious smile. Oh. Ace. Captain. Shut up. Ace looked indifferent. I'm not a captain until now, not to mention it's used when respecting others. You are also an excellent captain now, but the Blackbeard pirates? Captain Miguel Teach, are you kidding me? Although the situation was calm, everyone in the Blackbeard regiment could feel the killing intent revealed. Ignoring Ace's spreading killing intent, Teach opened his hands and shouted loudly, Thief ha 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 ha, that's right, my name is Blackbeard now. I know your purpose too, but let me explain first. Ace, the Whitebeard pirates are dead. Maybe you don't know that if you haven't witnessed the battle 9 years ago, but I saw it with my own eyes and predicted the future of the Whitebeard pirates. Whether it is team strength or cadre confrontation, the Whitebeard regiment is no match for the Flying Kingdom, and even the father is no match for that man. Now that the father is over 70 years old, he is no longer the most powerful man at the peak. For a strong man, his experience will only decline with time. So, the Whitebeard regiment has no future, and you don't want to face such a fragile father who is bound by illness every day. Enough. Ace interrupted the other party's speech. Could this be the reason for betraying the old man who has taken care of you for more than 20 years? He also killed your friend and family member Sage for this. The more he talked, the more excited he became, and flames burst out of his body involuntarily. Teach didn't deny it, but admitted it frankly. There is no way around it. Who let Saki get the devil fruit I wanted at that time? Although there were many accidents on the trip, Saki, I don't want to be a killer, and this fruit is not what I want. But no matter what, in the final analysis, it's because I can't see hope in my father, so naturally I can only pursue it by myself. The era that belonged to Whitebeard has passed, and I have already formulated a well-thought-out road to hegemony. Teach showed his heroic nature, and at the same time stared at Ace with a fierce look. Ha ha ha, thief, Ace. You are very honored and will become an indispensable part of my rise. Although Teach didn't say it clearly, but from his eyes, Ace could understand something, and couldn't help but coldly snorted. You think you've got me? And whether it's Sack's reason or your plan involving Luffy, I don't know, I can't let you go. They couldn't help but ask, do you know the Straw Hat Kid? Blackbeard paid attention to Luffy because of the events in Mogu Town, and the fact that his straw hat resembled the one Shanks used to have. Ace clenches his fist, and flames immediately pour into it, the signature fire fist action symbol. He's my brother. Under the roar, Ace has already attacked first. The whole person jumped up, and the flames hovering around his body condensed on his fist in less than a moment. Fire punch. The surging flames erupted brazenly, forming a huge flaming fist, blasting towards everyone in the Blackbeard regiment. The attack full of flames, which is also Ace's signature move, directly destroyed the solution where Blackbeard and the others were located, and a lot of houses were burned. Directly dodged the attack in embarrassment, Teach turned his head and said to the crew, don't make a move, you still can't win against that man. Teach, who was in the second team before, knows Ace's strength very well, and his crew members are far from Ace's opponents. Knowing that this battle would only hinder Teach, the other four immediately avoided a very long distance. Ace didn't stop, and his goal was dominated by Teach from the beginning to the end. Surrounded by the flames, like the king among them, Ace stood on the ruins, looking down at Sax. What about your ability? You don't hesitate to kill the ability that Teach stole, that dark fruit ability. I want to know too. Teach said with an angry face, and then the hair all over his body grew suddenly, and the sharp fangs grew wildly on both sides of his mouth. Boom. Like the roar of thunder and lightning above the sky. At this time, there were bursts of terrifying violent noises from time to time in almost the entire town of Banero Island. Flames flickered under Ace's feet, he leapt forward quickly, and punched out the flames in armed fists. The moment the fist hit Teach's body, a huge pillar of fire surged out, instantly making Teach's body burst into violent flames, just like a scene of roasting pork. It can be said that the hair was almost burnt to ashes, but the hot flames did not break through the pigskin defense under the armed color. Teach condensed the armed colors, and quickly shook off Ace's attack. Thief ha ha ha. A burst of arrogant laughter echoed in the area that turned into a sea of flames. Although there are many burn marks on his body, for Zone's strong resilience and recovery ability, He has already protected half of the damage with his armed force, and has no serious impact on Teach. Ace, you are not my match. Teach looked at Ace, his ferocious face was full of contempt and complacency. Anyway, he has been on the Whitebeard ship for more than 20 years. Compared with this brat, after all, there is still a gap in strength. However, ignoring Teach's words, Ace's whole body burned directly, and clusters of hot flames rushed to his arms quickly. Scrub. 2 cross-shaped flames burst out from the crossed index fingers of covered armament hockey, and blasted towards Teach. Call. Teach half-twisted his body, followed by Whitebeard's signature move of using shock fruit, condensing majestic power in his hands, and slammed forward. In an instant, a terrifying gust of wind flew out under the force, and between howls, it directly extinguished all the extremely hot flames. This is a gust of pure power, but there are absolutely very few people who can achieve this level. Seeing this situation, Ace looked at Teach, who was obviously just a wild boar, and felt something was wrong. Immediately after he noticed something, his pupils shrank suddenly. Your appearance seems to have changed. Because he hated the guy in front of him very much, he remembered Teach's appearance very clearly after chasing him for so long. But just after using that inexplicably powerful force, he noticed that Teach at this time, his appearance and image have undergone subtle changes, and the overall appearance is younger and slightly neutral. You found out, Ace. Without any intention of hiding, Teach touched some of the scars that had disappeared on his face and said, "Why, have you seen my lovely sisters?" Stepping back to the side, Ace continued to look at Teach incomprehensibly. Ace, do you know that I have been brought to Dad's boat since I was 10 years old, all for the most vicious ability in the history of the devil fruit, even killing my companions and betraying Dad? Everything is because this devil fruit has infinite gravity like a black hole, which can invalidate the ability of any capable person. It is commonly known that the gravity sucks the devil on the capable person. And in the case of deeper development, dark fruit's strong gravitational force can even be used to 100% take away and transfer the demonic ability of others. Teach also blew himself up at this moment. Because of his own changes in the situation, he could no longer obtain dark fruit, so he simply said it directly, and it was another love to vent the hatred he had always had in his heart. The rule of this sea is that everyone can only have one devil fruit in their lifetime. And my physique is also special. In addition to me, I also have my lovely sisters in my body. So in fact, I can also realize multiple abilities like the air general. And as long as I get dark fruit, and then I can plunder the fruits I want again, even the fruits of my father. Hearing this, Ace's expression changed again, and the flames on his body became more fierce, and he couldn't help shouting angrily. Dad has adopted you for so many years, how dare you have such wolfish ambitions, Bean. Ace, who truly regards Whitebeard as his father, will never allow others to think badly about Whitebeard. The road to becoming a king is ruthless and arduous. Teach spread his hands, but since I have told you my true purpose all along, it means that this road is no longer feasible for me. This dark fruit is actually a trick from the air general. It is essentially a wild boar fruit, so I have lost the most important opportunity. And in order to make up for the lack, and reflect this shit's wild boar ability, I got a second ability by chance. As he said that, a heavy aura erupted from Teach's body instantly, and the explosive power overflowed from his body, and his whole body swelled up for it. Teach slowly exhaled the hot air under the rapid operation of internal power from his mouth. This is the ability of my second fruit, the power fruit. Give me infinite power beyond the limits of human beings. Boom. After Teach stepped down, the ground directly shattered into a deep pit with tens of meters in length. Teach, who was still accumulating strength on the spot, disappeared in an instant. With the power of the riot and the rapidity brought about by the counter shock, he watched the domineering punch go directly towards Ace. Fire punch. Ace, who was a little bit full because he was shocked by Teach's words, lost the distance to dodge for a while, and could only condense the violent flames again and punch the attack that hit him. The fire wave rapidly enlarged, sweeping across a range of tens of meters, and the billowing heat wave hit Blackbeard Teach. The scorching high temperature directly distorted the space. In this regard, Teach did not stop, and still punched with a violent armed look, and the terrifying power instantly annihilated all the high temperature flames, showing a scene of 10 powers falling 10 times. Boom. Ace was hit by a punch, and flew upside down like a cannonball to the mountains hundreds of meters away, blasting out a piece of gravel. Hoo-hoo. On the broken rock, Ace was panting heavily, his body already covered with many embarrassing scars. For him, this should be the worst injury he has suffered since joining the Whitebeard regiment. Thief, ha ha ha. Teach's arrogant laughter came from far to near. It's such a pity, Ace. It's a pity that they designated you to be captured alive, otherwise I would really hate a talent like you. Maybe you can take this world with me. Ace snorted coldly, propped himself up, and said with firm eyes, "In my whole life, I will only choose Whitebeard as king." The power of flames gushed out all over his body, circle after circle, and spread rapidly in all directions. Great Flame Precept Emperor Yan. A large amount of flame power was compressed into a huge sphere. Like the sun, bright and dazzling. Ace held it in his hand and stared at the approaching Teach. Next moment, a huge flame ball like a scorching sun directly attacked Teach. The terrifying flames collided with infinite power again. Compared with all previous attacks, it is more magnificent. The energy that erupted from the sky for this purpose almost roared to the entire island. Boom. The terrifying collision even made the island vibrate. Several shocking cracks spread wildly in all directions. After more than 10 minutes, the light that illuminated the entire sky slowly disappeared. Thief, ha ha ha. Smoke and dust filled the dilapidated ground. A hat with a sad face and a smiling face fell among the ruins. Fire Fist Ace lay unconscious in a huge pothole. Teach, who had turned into a human form again, stood on top of the pothole and laughed out loud with his mouth open. The stepping stone to Shichibukai, there it is. A week after the Battle of Banero Island, New World, Flying Kingdom. Master Moda, the glamorous and charming queen of the Pleasure District, with short blonde curly hair, came from outside the hall with her waist twisted. Stussy looked at the figure sitting on the main seat, wearing high heels, elegant yet beautiful, stepped forward and curtsied cautiously. "Our relationship, this kind of etiquette is unnecessary." Moda waved his hand, asked Stussy to get up and asked, "Why, is there something about the world government that needs to be reported? Can't I come to you specially for my own ideas?" Stussy smiled and leaned forward, almost leaning on the general's chief seat. Looking at Moda, in every aspect, she simply fell in love with this man. Moda touched Stussy's pretty face, which was coming forward specially, and smiled, "Of course, but I can still see the difference between the two." Instead of putting aside the movement of Moda rubbing his face, Stussy was satisfied with such a movement, took a deep breath and licked the corner of his mouth. "This time there is indeed a major event to report to you. Tell me the story." Stussy showed a funny smile. "The task you planned has been achieved. The higher-ups have decided to officially execute Fire Fist Ace in Naval Headquarters, intending to reduce the recent bad turmoil through this incident." Moda's eyes flickered without any surprise. Because of the recent series of moves by the Straw Hats, it is inevitable that this victory will turn the wind around. And as long as Whitebeard enters the Naval Headquarters home court in this way, Marine, who has the advantage of conscription, will definitely have a very high winning rate. This also means that the Summit War, which opened the era of chaos, is coming. 5 days later. Crash, on the island closest to the headquarters of World Economic News. Like pieces of dark clouds flying over, tens of thousands of newsbirds, carrying shocking news, flew to all parts of the sea. Residents who were already familiar with this were suddenly amazed to see newspapers falling from the sky one by one, which meant that these newspapers were actually in a free form. Is there any big news from world government? Morgans, who is an underground king, would never have such a benevolent handout of newspapers for free. Even if the price of one copy is only 10 Baileys, but the amount of more than billions, each issue adds up to an absolutely good price. And if there is a situation of free distribution of newspapers, it can only be the world government with deep pockets, buying the total amount of newspapers for the new issue. Every time at this time, it must be that the world government has a huge event to tell the whole world. Just like the execution of the One Piece king Luo Jia. But since it's free, it's natural not to watch it for nothing. Seeing this, many people also picked up the newspapers on the ground. Then, the terrified expressions froze directly on the faces of the people watching the newspaper. Drops of cold sweat flowed from the forehead, and the pupils of both eyes trembled with the mood at this moment. This. Hey, are you kidding me? The same expression, full of horror and shock, happened in countless areas where the newsbird flew over. The newspaper specially marked the big event. Blackbeard Teach defeats Fire Fist Ace. Becomes one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Close black lens bracket. Marine will publicly execute Fire Fist Ace in Marineford in a week's time. Close black lens bracket. Naval Headquarters will launch the biggest action since conscription. Close black lens bracket. Marine is ready for action during wartime. The elite Marines from all over the world gather. Close black lens bracket. There is a picture in the newspaper, which shows the back of Ace with his hands handcuffed in seastone handcuffs, and escorted by the Marine to Impel down. It also confirmed the remarks in the newspaper, definitely not just talk. Public execution, Fire Fist Ace? That's the captain of Whitebeard's second squad. Is Marine going to start a war with Whitebeard? In this world, Anyone who knows Whitebeard well knows that this sea royal group will never forgive the existence of hurting their companions. Finally, the world government is going to govern the pirates of New World. Marine can definitely win. Didn't they lose last time because of the unstable situation in New World? It's hard to say. After all, it was just fighting against the redhead, and Whitebeard was the one who had the ability to destroy the world, and he was once on par with One Piece Luo Jia. Didn't Marine go all out at the time? It must be Marine who won the final victory. Whitebeard is a corner of the current situation in the sea. After many years of stability, is it going to usher in a rampage again? All kinds of voices stirred up in the area where the information was received. New World, Daros Rosa. This is a tropical island with a resort style. The inherent advantages brought by the climatic conditions make the island warm and pleasant in all seasons, plus the prosperity and peace brought by Doflamingo's rule. In recent years, Daros Rosa has become quite popular all over the world, and has become one of the most popular holiday and tourism countries. With the protection of Shichibukai and the prosperity brought by the shipping agency, the residents of the island have almost become the supporters of the Don Quixote family. The brutal King Liku was soon abandoned and forgotten by the residents in this comparison. Located in King's Heights, Doflamingo was sitting on the sofa, holding red wine in his left hand, blocking the beautiful woman with his right hand, and let out waves of evil laughter. She. Those idiots from the world government finally did something interesting. Although the news bird has not yet flown to Daros Rosa, but as Shichibukai, Doflamingo has received the order of compulsory recruitment, as well as the general cause and effect. I didn't expect that guy to use this guy as a stepping stone. The corner of the four emperors, who used to be the strongest man in the world, and the newborn marine who owns four monsters admiral. She is about to usher in an unprecedented huge wave, the era of true heroes. It is coming soon. Doflamin stood up suddenly, staring directly at the distant sea, eyes full of joy and excitement. But before that, Doflamingo has to ask what his real boss is doing. After all, it is impossible for that man to remain indifferent to such a big event. Seeing this, Violet on the side felt even heavier, especially after using her ability to know the existence behind Doflamingo. It made her feel desperate and suffocated in a deep quagmire. In just one day, the Marine government's public execution of Ace has already spread throughout the world. The cloud of war soon enveloped the entire sea. Naval headquarters has successively gathered a large number of elites from all over the world, and is obviously ready for an all-out war. This preparation, that is, the conviction that Whitebeard will take the initiative to attack naval headquarters. And it is true. In New World, because of this incident, countless undercurrents are already surging. Especially the Whitebeard pirates, the victims of this incident. Daddy. Marco, the captain of the first team, reported. The summoning order has been sent out, and all the pirate groups have responded to our call, and everyone is gearing up. The tall and majestic Whitebeard sat on the throne on the deck with a solemn and cold face. No matter whoever dares to take action against our Whitebeard pirates, he must be prepared to take responsibility. The opponent is naval headquarters. Hive Island, the island area where the Four Emperors Kaido is located. After learning the information about the current incident, Kaido was ridden on the top of Skull Island, drinking wine and laughing. This is the most chaotic era to come. But, woo, Whitebeard, you old are really stupid. For a kid who has no blood relationship, you actually want to get everyone in the whole regiment. No matter the new members of the Beast's pirates or the captured original Shichibukai and others, they all looked at Kaido, who was laughing and crying with some fear at this time. Of course, many people encouraged it. Old man Whitebeard is really stupid. Brother Kaido, why don't we sit on the hills and watch the tigers fight, and then reap the benefits of the fishermen and annex the territory of the Whitebeard pirates in one fell swoop? With these words, it is already determined that Whitebeard must lose. The Four Emperors' status in the New World is unrivaled, of course. As the location of the base camp, even Marine would not normally choose to fight in the Sea Emperor's lair, which would only cause too much loss, and the loss outweighs the gain. And if the other party took the initiative to march into Marlene Fando, the meaning would be different. Especially take a fire fist to fish, you can really attract all the Whitebeard pirates. In the eyes of these beast pirates whose interests are paramount, this is somewhat insane. For the sake of a son, even if the strength is good, it is not worth going to an all-out war. It is better to carry out fierce revenge later. After all, although New World is a paradise for pirates, it does not mean that there are really only pirates. But there are quite a few marine branches also set up in this sea area. What do you know, you idiot? This is the benevolence and righteousness among pirates. The pirate who just proposed was immediately knocked away by Kaido, who was suddenly furious, and then Kaido said in surprise, Laozi will also go to sea and see this war. Don't be impulsive, brother Kaido. Immediately, many younger brothers rushed forward to persuade Kaido regardless of Kaido's possible change of mood. But it is obviously impossible to change Kaido's mind, not to mention that Moda has communicated with him, and he can disrupt the battlefield as a third party. There will be a good show for him then. Therefore, it is naturally impossible for Kaido to miss such a good thing. Everything is still ready. There are less than 6 days until the public execution. At this time, after a hard battle that no one knew about, the Straw Hats finally arrived at the last island in the first half of the Sabodi archipelago. Although there is no Zauba plot in the original book, but because of the need for coding, I still rely on inquiries to come to the famous bar, Shaki's Rip Bar, and also met Pluton, Rayleigh, the former right-hand man of One Piece. Speaking of which, there are big events that are turbulent enough to happen recently, and the new world will also change for this reason. With your current strength, it is still difficult to break through in that sea area. If possible, let Rayleigh teach you for a few years? Shaki laughed. Huh? Can a big man like Pluton really do it? Although he has dealt with them before and felt the kindness shown by Rayleigh and Shaki, Chopper still jumped up from his seat in surprise, because this is the teaching of the super strong in the old days. Of course, he's been looking forward to your arrival. Shaki touched Chopper while looking at Rayleigh with a smile. Rayleigh didn't deny it either. He nodded and looked straight at Luffy, with both emotion and reminiscence in his eyes. Shanks also asked me to take care of you. As his predecessor, you are the new era he supports, and I want to see how far it will grow in the future. In fact, the Straw Hat, Nika Fruit, and the character that is very similar to Luo Jia also made Futura believe that Luffy's hand is the Joey boy that the times have been waiting for. Shanks. As soon as he mentioned the red-haired benefactor and guide, Luffy couldn't help holding the Straw Hat in his arms, as if thinking about the memory again, and said more firmly, I will definitely complete in his promise. On the other hand, he ignored Luffy's emotion, and although he also thanked Pluton for giving up his teaching, Hughes, who was the main informant in the team, couldn't help asking, speaking of which, what major event is going to happen recently? Don't you understand? We've been stuck at the Thriller Bark before, and we don't seem to have encountered a newsbird on the way. Hughes said, embarrassingly scratching his head. Shaki looked at the crowd and saw that they all looked puzzled, so he knew that they really didn't know about this matter, so he continued, Naval Headquarters, we are going to fight the Whitebeard pirates soon. Boom. War? Everyone in the Straw Hats couldn't help shouting at the top of their voices. Is this true? Usopp couldn't help covering his mouth. This is too sudden and shocking, right? Marine, which symbolizes the strongest violent executive agency under the world government, is also the so-called strongest force for maintaining the sea. And the Whitebeard pirates are definitely not weak, not only the famous Four Emperors team in New World, but their captain is the strongest man in the world, Whitebeard, who has the power to destroy the world. These two worlds, which can be claimed to be the most powerful forces, are going to collide and start a war. This news is really exciting, and it is difficult for people to digest for a while. Immediately afterwards, Hughes and Sanji remembered something, and said with a strange look on their faces, speaking of which, Luffy's big brother, Ace, seems to be the captain of the second team of the Whitebeard regiment. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of Shaki and Rayleigh changed immediately. Ah, that seems to be the case. Luffy screamed with a look of sudden realization, and then looked nervously at Shaki. Whitebeard shouldn't lose, but Ace told me how great that guy is. Suddenly, it seemed that something was wrong between Shaki and Rayleigh, especially the sudden silence, which made Luffy seem to understand something, and said in a trembling tone, Shaki Ant, is it true that the Whitebeard group will lose? Whitebeard will probably lose, but the real trouble is not this. Rarely, Shaki also struggled with not knowing how to speak. She can be regarded as a kind of person who loves the house and black. For the Straw Hat team, she appreciates and supports both. And the world's top war between Whitebeard and Marine is not suitable for this kind of Grand Line newcomers to participate, even if they are the best among supernovas. But after all, this is the execution of his big brother. If something really happened, especially in this unknowing situation, there is no guarantee that it will not become a lifetime of regret and pain in Luffy's heart. Seeing Shaki's hesitation, Rayleigh said, Shaki, you can't hide this, and as a man, he has the right to choose. Hearing this, Shaki sighed, and could only continue. Then let me briefly tell you about the origin of the current situation where Whitebeard and Marine are fighting. And the current situation of your big brother, Little Monkey. Operator. Some time ago, on Bonero Island, Blackbeard Marshal Teach, a former member of the Whitebeard Pirates, and Fire Fist Ace, the captain of the Whitebeard Pirates native team. In the end, Blackbeard won and handed Fire Fist Ace to Naval Headquarters, becoming the new 7 warlords of the sea who succeeded Crocodile. At the same time, Naval Headquarters will decide to publicly execute Fire Fist Ace within a week. In terms of time, there should be 6 days left. Shaki told everything in a few words. At this moment, even the members of the Straw Hats fell into an extremely strange and quiet atmosphere. What did you say? Whoosh. Two retractable rubber arms grabbed the bar stand, brought Luffy's thin body above the bar, and even looked directly at Shaki excitedly. Ace him. How about Ace? Will Ace die? At this moment, Luffy did not have the leisurely, cheerful and laughing expression of the past, but was shocked and anxious. Shaki didn't take some impolite actions at this moment into her heart, because she could feel the fearful emotion of the boy in front of her even more when she got closer. It depends on the situation of the war. If Whitebeard wins, Fire Fist Ace can be rescued. Shaki said ambiguously. If he loses, it should be the result of inescapable execution. Hearing this, Luffy couldn't help but let go of his hands, fell back to the ground, and squatted down with his head in his arms in an autistic manner. Immediately after he thought of something, he hurriedly took out Ace's paper of life from the straw hat, and the white paper, which was as big as a palm, was now being gradually burned by sparks little by little. Hey, Luffy, just calm down. Sanji forcefully pulled his body back to the seat. We don't want anything to happen to Ace, and it's not time for Ace to be executed, we still have a chance. What he said obviously made his position clear, and the rest of his companions followed suit to comfort him. Seeing this, Rayleigh was quite moved. Even if it is naval headquarters of Pirate Nightmare, the friendship of companions who are willing to fight for one of them is really familiar and rare at the same time. With the support of his companions, Luffy, who has such a personality, cheered up. Suddenly, he seemed to remember something, or in order to seize all opportunities that are beneficial to Ace, he looked at Rayleigh. Uncle Rayleigh, can you help us? Ace is also the son of One Piece. The scene instantly became quiet. The entire bar, which had already been cleared, seemed to have fallen into a silent vacuum at this moment, without any sound. Many members of the Straw Hat group opened their mouths wide in astonishment, and rolled their tongues out. The word shock was written all over their faces. Shaki's pupils also shrank suddenly, silently dispelling the huge shock caused by Luffy's words in his heart. Luo Jia has a son, and he is about to be executed? This is extremely heavy, enough to set off boundless storms on the sea, and even has far-reaching impact and significance on the situation in various places. Immediately after that, Shaki also had an answer as to why Naval Headquarters announced the execution of Fire Fist Ace with great fanfare. The key point is that Shaki didn't question what Luffy said, or didn't want to think that this matter was false. As Shaki, one of the intelligence leaders, she can easily judge the truth of a person's speech, and the name Ace, when it comes to Luo Jia, is of great significance. And to say that the person who was shocked the most in the venue was naturally none other than Rayleigh, the right-hand man of One Piece and a close friend with deep affection. Ace is Luo Jia's son. Rayleigh was there with his eyes slightly empty, whispering softly in his mouth. Yeah. Luffy nodded emphatically. I knew this when I was a child, but Ace really hates people mentioning One Piece in front of him, so I gradually stopped talking about it. As soon as these words came out, it became even more true that Ace was Luo Jia's bloodline. But without thinking about the impact of his own words and the true and false effects, Luffy continued, So Uncle Rayleigh, can you help me rescue Ace together? Without answering Luffy immediately, Rayleigh took out the wine box on his body and started drinking. The clear wine slowly flowed down from the corner of his mouth, and all kinds of emotions that came with the news seemed to flow into his lungs together with the wine. It's really quite surprising news. A smile slowly appeared on Rayleigh's face, but the next second he shook his head and said, But I will not participate in this war. Rayleigh's refusal can definitely be said to be an unexpected result. Huh? Chopper screamed again and again in a very incomprehensible way. Frankie and Hughes couldn't help but say, That's your captain's son, he will be executed soon. But isn't he Whitebeard's son now? Rayleigh said, It's Whitebeard who should be in a hurry and need to do something about it. Saying this, it seemed that there was a feeling of inhumanity, and Rayleigh further added, Of course, I will be relieved and happy that Luo Jia has a son and has achieved something on this road. But when he chooses to bear the Whitebeard logo, and is active in this sea as the son of Whitebeard and his captain, it is tantamount to drawing a clear line with our Jia pirates. And from what you said, maybe because of Luo Jia's bloodline, Ace's childhood experience must not have been very pleasant. Maybe he might not like me, a remnant of Luo Jia's regiment, and I am not qualified to help him. This changes nothing. So I'm not in a position to help Ace, and the execution should be left to Whitebeard. Listening to Rayleigh's free and easy words, many members of the Straw Hats expressed their understanding. After all, this is still a matter of faction between pirates, not to mention that the Whitebeard and Luo Jia pirates have been rivals for a long time. Luffy also wanted to continue to say something, but finally closed his mouth. However, thank you for letting me know that Luo Jia has a son. Looking at the gloomy Luffy, Rayleigh slowly got up from his seat. Except that I can't help you rescue Ace together, but my old bones can still give you some help to a certain extent. Help. Senior Rayleigh, can you teach us hockey? Enel, who hadn't spoken until now, said. When Rayleigh heard this, there was a glint in his eyes. You guys already know about hockey. Well, we met Luffy's grandfather a while ago, and he explained this magical ability to us. Sanji nodded, pointing to Luffy and Enel at the same time. The two of them have already mastered the knowledge of Colorgon. If you can teach us hockey's guidance, maybe our strength can be one step closer, and there is an additional possibility to save Ace in that battlefield. After Sanji finished speaking, Luffy, who is currently most eager to improve his strength, had his eyes lit up, and immediately looked at Rayleigh expectantly. How about time? Rayleigh pondered slightly, and then brought up this crucial factor. Even if I start teaching you today, and save the day of rushing to Marineford for execution, you will only have 5 days. 5 days. Counting this time, Rayleigh was already shaking his head inwardly. Hockey, it takes the most time to lay a solid foundation, especially the most important weapon color. Time's enough, Uncle Rayleigh, Luffy said firmly. Even if they can't master it, it is enough to have such a senior to teach them, which can definitely improve the strength of their team significantly. Seeing this, Rayleigh nodded. Since this is the case, I will try my best to teach you to understand within the limited time. After getting Rayleigh's reply, Luffy also solemnly thanked him. In that case, I'll arrange the venue for you. Shiki smiled and walked from the counter to the door. Just as he was about to open the door, he felt someone approaching the door. As expected, the door was quickly opened from the outside, and an angry voice came from outside. Yo, Shiki, long time no see. While saying hello, Yamato walked into the signature hotel with a few people in the team. Yamato. Shiki couldn't help being surprised. Why are you here? Although there is not much contact with Moda, but before the rapid development of the Flying Kingdom, she still had several cooperative relationships with each other, and Yamato, who was already famous at that time, had a meeting once. Before Yamato could reply, the Straw Hats, who had a deep memory, were also nervous, especially the trio composed of Usopp, Hughes and Chopper, trembling with fear. After the capital of the Seven Waters learned more detailed information from Grandpa Luffy at that time, they became even more afraid of the troops of the Flying Kingdom, especially the heavyweight woman in front of them, who was even more terrifying than that scary masked violent woman several times. One of the strongest trump cards of Air General, Reki Yamato, a big man with a bounty close to 2 billion Baileys. When they learned this information from Grandpa Luffy, several people were not even scared to death. And now seeing such a big man with his own eyes again, it seems that souls have already emerged from their wide open mouths. Sanji covered his heart and suppressed the throbbing heart that wanted to flatter. Maybe it was because the group of guys in front of him had attacked the Straw Hats before, or maybe it was because there were only two beauties, Kuina and Yamato, and know the lethality of the fairyland before made Sanji maintain his stance for a while. It's just that from the corners of his mouth and even the traces of blood coming out from gritting his teeth, one can feel the degree of suffering and suppression in his heart. Damn it. It's you guys. Seeing the enemy who had hurt his companion, Luffy also jumped out with a displeased face, looked left and right at the same time, and continued dissatisfied. Where is that mask girl? This time we must avenge the last time. Why are you here? Yamato couldn't help looking at Luffy who stood in front of him, full of disgust. Room. Luo also whispered, and under his palm, an invisible space quickly spread to the surroundings. Hey, this is my territory, no fighting. Seeing this situation, Shiki, who heard the general situation, clapped his hands to stop him, and then looked at Yamato. Come to me suddenly, could it be that Moda has something? Do you arrange it? It's not. Zoro spoke for Yamato. Immediately afterwards, Kuina also stood up, and looked at Rayleigh at the side with increasing momentum. We just want to ask this strong swordsman from the old era for advice in our own name and at the same time as a swordsman. Ask me for advice. Rayleigh glanced sharply at the young people brought by Yamato. Knowing the origin of these guys, he was not surprised that his identity was directly exposed. And he doesn't have much time to plan to fight with these guys, especially the younger generation of the Flying Kingdom in front of him. The old man has already retired, and will not fight with you. Hey, you guys. As soon as Rayleigh refused, Luffy's dissatisfied words sounded again. Uncle Rayleigh has decided to help us train, but he has no time to accompany you. As soon as these words came out, Usopp and the others looked at their captain speechlessly. Isn't that the equivalent of self-destructing? Hey. Zoro glanced at Luffy when he heard the words, but in the next moment, his figure appeared in front of Luffy like a gust of wind, and he was already slashed by the sword, Tiger Roar. Zoro's sudden violent movement caught Luffy by surprise and he couldn't dodge at all. At the critical moment, Rayleigh quickly appeared in front of Luffy, and the weapon he raised out of nowhere directly blocked the attack. Clang. The blades of the two men met, making a crisp sound. There was no wind and waves around, setting off a circle of dust that spread outward. If you just want to force me to take action, you're going too far, Roronoa Zoro, Rayleigh said solemnly, his eyes sharpened. But isn't it successful? Zoro smiled lightly, and then quickly shouted to his best friend behind him, Luo. I told you not to use me as a tool, man. Luo yelled angrily, but snapped his fingers with distaste for integrity. Immediately, Rayleigh, Yamato and others in the tavern flashed and disappeared into the tavern, only to be replaced by a few small stones that fell on the ground. Shiki, who was about to say something, immediately turned her head to the door. Of course, she knew the ability of this man Trafalgar Law. At the same time, they heard the sound of fighting outside, and Luffy and others immediately rushed out the door. Looks like you won't dodge this time, Pluton, Zoro said, and at the same time, in order to show his seriousness, he directly entered the fighting state of the three-sword style. Luo's space transferability can be limited by the strong haki, although his two-color haki has reached a higher level of perception and has reached the ultimate awareness. The edge of. But for the Pluton in front of me, there must still be some distance on the haki level. Rayleigh raised the knife. Because of your behavior, I am somewhat unhappy. Ah. While biting his weapon, Zoro laughed, and the sword force on his body erupted instantly. The next moment, Zoro, who was posing to hunt a tiger, suddenly turned into an afterimage and disappeared without a trace, and his sword struck with a sound that pierced the atmosphere. Ding. The sound of the blades clashing broke out suddenly, and the aroused wind pressure caused the surrounding grass to howl. Rayleigh looked at Zoro, who appeared in front of his eyes, felt the aura constantly emanating from the other party, and became serious. Strong strength, sharp edge, worthy of being the new generation of swordmasters in the Flying Kingdom. As soon as the words fell, the strength of his wrist suddenly increased, and the blade instantly pressed down Zoro's three-sword attack by more than 10 centimeters. When the opponent was forced to go down, he withdrew his sword and returned without hesitation. Then, the extremely violent haki instantly turned into black lightning, wrapped around the handle of the knife, and once again. The offensive reversed, and Zoro had no intention of dodging. Immediately, he poured more strength into his arms, raised his wrists, and reversed the position where the blades intersected to the height of the opponent's attack in just 2 or 3 seconds. Boom. Immediately, there was a huge sonic boom on the grass, which was deafening, and the surrounding dust and moss were rustled by the strong wind. Have you actually mastered it? The attacks did not collide, and Rayleigh looked at Zoro in shock, because the same terrifying conquerors were constantly venting from his body, and it was more like a high-level entanglement, flowing wantonly up and down his body. Of course, because I want to become the world's #1 swordsman, even Master Moda is no exception. Following Zoro's shout, the hero Yewing took haki on his body to vent, the endless fighting spirit intertwined into flames, and the overlord Black Thunder rushed wantonly. Rayleigh, who was originally a little angry because of what the other party did, could not help saying, interesting. The next moment, the tyranny from Pluton also vented, and haki, who was stronger than Zoro, directly repelled the opponent forcefully. At the same time, the aura became more terrifying and subtle than before. There is no doubt that Rayleigh is also preparing to show the level of a true great swordsman. And aware of this, Kuina, who was also itchy, couldn't hold back the desire to make a move, and with a sharp and tricky terrifying slash, he directly retreated Rayleigh, who was about to attack. Holding the words of Hedao, Kuina landed beside Zoro, looking at Rayleigh with the same fiery eyes. I want to fight the famous Pluton Rayleigh. I don't mind if I get involved too. Her level, according to her master's level of experience, has already reached the threshold of a great swordsman. Looking at Rayleigh, a great swordsman who has never fought before, she doesn't want to miss it. After all, she wasn't sure if Rayleigh had the desire to continue the fight after the Zoro battle was over, not to mention that she didn't have as strong a face as Zoro. Rayleigh didn't say much, just came with a terrifying slash as his answer. Hey, Kuina! Zoro shouted, dissatisfied. The next moment he looked at his friend who was flying to attack. He could only set up the same offensive and rush forward together. Hey, are you kidding me? Not far away, the Straw Hats and others rushed to this area not far from the bar. Looking at the fierce fight, they couldn't help opening their mouths in disbelief. What level of fighting scene is this? Even if you look at it from a distance, you can feel the oppressive aura that is constantly coming from there. To be able to fight like this with the right arm of One Piece, the people of Flying Kingdom are so scary. Chopper hugged Usopp, who was also trembling because of this, and couldn't help crying. Sudden. The sound of electric current flashing, even under the sound of blasting blasts in the distance, it is extremely harsh. Directly drawing a terrifying current circle to stop Straw Hat and the others, Yamato said bluntly. Hey, don't bother them now, or I won't be responsible for any accidents. And looking at the intertwined thunder, Enel glared at Yamato with an ugly expression. Ever since he handed over the fruit that he thought was not a good thing, Enel has always had an indescribable feeling of regret in his heart. Especially after joining the Straw Hat Pirates and knowing the real powerful ability of that fruit from the Devil Fruit illustrated book, the regret is even stronger. Enel has always wanted to become the most powerful person in his heart due to his childhood experience. Although the fight with the Straw Hats turned enemies into friends, the desire to destroy Sky Island was dispelled. But the idea of becoming a strong man who can't control his life has not changed. And with such a mentality, after learning that Thunder Fruit, one of the top abilities in Logia, can become a more powerful existence in one step, and was sold by him at a price of several million Baileys, how could Enel feel better? Especially the person who took away the ability that originally belonged to him is right in front of him at this moment. The electric field that instantly turned the ground into scorched black with a single swipe, the more shocking it looked, the deeper Enel's state of mind burst at this time. He tightly grasped the technology stick that Frankie and Usopp built for him, and stared at Yamato, as if he was ready to fight. The Straw Hat Luffy was more direct. Faced with Yamato's warning, he just paused for a moment, and then stepped towards the electric field without any hesitation. The high-voltage current that can instantly turn the ground into scorched earth, but the Straw Hat Luffy just passed through this terrifying line of defense, and did not suffer any damage except for the white smoke from his clothes due to the high temperature. By the way, Luffy has the ability of Rubber Fruit. Rubber is not afraid of lightning. Usopp, who was about to call Luffy to be cautious, shouted immediately when he saw this situation. Rubber? It should be Nika Fruit, right? Yamato just looked at Luffy, and couldn't help muttering to himself. Regarding the real name of this fruit, as one of Moda's closest vassals and aces, Yamato naturally knows the real name of this fruit, and is even more aware of the possible meaning of this fruit. It was the symbol of Kiboi that Iron Moda said in the prison at that time. According to the period of prophecy, it means that the Straw Hat Luffy in front of him is the core figure in the future turbulent era. At the same time, it is also the key pawn that Moda is preparing to play. Yamato looked deeply at Luffy, while grabbing the mace on his waist. I should have said that I am not responsible for any accidents. Stopping not far away from where Yamato blocked, Luffy looked at the three people behind him who were fighting fiercely, then stared at Yamato again and said, I hate people in the Flying Kingdom. Whether it's bullying my friends or now influencing Uncle Rayleigh and holding us back. Luffy put his fists on the ground, using his feet as pumps, his skin instantly turned red, and overheated steam rose from his surroundings. So, I must beat you to the ground. Rubber jet machine guns. Under the sound of catharsis, the figure of Luffy in the straw hat disappeared instantly, faster than the usual shaving, like an air bomb. In the blink of an eye, Luffy, who was breathing white, flashed into the office in front of Yamato, and the strength of the rubber condensed in his hand was blasted head-on like a machine gun. Although it is possible to dodge with knowledge or even an instant dodge, Yamato just didn't dodge or dodge, letting the impacting fists under countless accelerations hit him. Whoosh. Zzz. The rubber machine gun directly passed through Yamato's body. The location where the fist was bombarded turned into countless electric currents and flickered. This is the most basic elementalization of Logia, but it is also the easiest way to avoid it for Luffy, who does not have any armament hockey in front of him. The machine gun attack under the high temperature and acceleration even directly smashed the ground under Yamato's feet. Looking at the opponent who did not dodge or dodge and was still unharmed, Luffy shook his waist back and forcibly retracted his fists. Seeing this, Yamato did not pursue for the time being. The doctor smiled and said, "Is there any other means of attack?" Luffy didn't answer, but suddenly bit the thumb of his right hand and blew it up like a balloon. Third gear giant pistol. Turning into a fist bigger than a giant, Luffy roared and slammed towards the front of Yamato, covering a distance of more than 10 meters around him. Interesting. Looking at the slow movements in front of him, Yamato's whole body turned into a flash of lightning the moment the fist hit him. Boom. The ground was directly blasted into a deep hole by the third gear pistol. Immediately afterwards, Yamato, which turned into several electric particles, recondensed above Luffy. He moved slightly lower, holding the mace tightly with both hands. His pupils flashed suddenly, violent hockey surged out, and wiped out crackling blue-red arcs in the air. With the strength of the twisting of the waist, he pulled the thunder and the tyrant to wrap around the anxious and terrifying thunder, and Yamato threw it out forcefully, and the air immediately made the sound of tearing apart. Thunder 8 trigrams. Like the speed of lightning flashes, just in the blink of an eye, the mace has been bombarded head-on Luffy's turned abdomen. Wow. Luffy couldn't help crying out in pain, and even more blood gushed out from the corner of his mouth. Immediately afterwards, like a missile, the thin body was directly bombarded to the ground. Boom boom. The ground trembled violently. Smoke and dust filled the air, and gravel splashed. A huge air wave erupted, like an air wave constantly sweeping through a frenzy, sweeping away everything around. Seeing this, Rayleigh waved his sword and slashed with a terrifying sword force, forcing Zoro and Kuina to retreat. Although the latter's insightful eyes were quickly detected, Rayleigh had already achieved his goal. The subordinates quickly rushed towards the huge pothole where Luffy was. When the thick smoke and dust dispersed, the Straw Hat Luffy with his eyes turned white was lying in the deep pit. The whole person was directly blown away by this blow, and all consciousness was blown away, and even breathing became faint. This is a terrorist attack entangled by the ultimate tyrant. Even a person with a strong armed color will not feel comfortable being hit, let alone a rookie who has not even mastered Haki. Although fortunately the blow was not fatal, it was enough to cause a terrifying serious injury. Rayleigh couldn't help looking at Yamato, with anger rising in his eyes. Since he is a famous big shot in New World, it's too much to do this kind of cruelty to a young rookie. I kept my hands. Not caring about Pluton Rayleigh's surging momentum, Yinhe took back the mace. Because of the addition of Joey Boy, the retainers belonging to the Moda faction don't like Luffy very much, and the same is true for Yamato. Anyway, Runty had also knocked out the other party before, so it shouldn't be a big deal for her to follow her, not to mention that she had already stopped in order to save the other party's life. Bringing a tyrant is also called stopping. Shaki, who followed him, said with a dark face. The rest of the Straw Hats also looked at Yamato with anger and fear, and Ainilu, who was looking ready to go, put away his weapons. The disparity in strength was too huge, so big that his courage to make a move was completely defeated by this blow. "And, isn't there a famous doctor here?" Yamato looked at Luo and said. The intelligence energy involved behind Shaki is worthy of her face, because these may help Moda to a certain extent. Luo couldn't help but tightened his grip on Giku's hand, and then sighed helplessly. Although he came here to avoid being a coolie for those guys to transfer items, he didn't expect that he would still be unable to avoid becoming a toolman. He glanced at the embarrassed Straw Hat Luffy, a little disgusted, but quickly analyzed the situation, and said coldly, "This situation requires equipment, and I didn't bring those equipments." As he said that, he directly took out a test tube from his arms, opened the cork with his thumb, and poured the essence directly on the Straw Hat Luffy. The essence penetrated from the skin, and the god-level glance instantly appeared. Luffy, who was originally seriously injured, immediately recovered from the injury at a speed visible to the naked eye. "Luo, did you still bring this?" Yamato was also a little surprised, and then looked at Luffy again. "Then, let me help him wake up directly." After saying that, Yamato raised her index finger, and the electric current quickly climbed to her white arm, and then continuously condensed on the index finger wearing the ring. In order to be more effective, it was even equipped with an armed blessing. "Call out." The current lacing crashed on Luffy. Seeing this situation, the members of the Straw Hats immediately wanted to go forward, but were stopped by Shaki. "It's a means of thunderfruit, Takumi." In response to Shaki's words, Luffy, who had fainted, felt the thunder and lightning bombardment for the first time, and the lost consciousness could not help being pulled back by the pain, and immediately yelled in pain. Seeing this, Yamato withdrew his fingers, and the continuous thunder and lightning stopped. "If that's the case, then I'll leave first. I don't know what's going on with Perona and the others." After speaking, Yamato turned into lightning and left the scene quickly. Of course, this is an excuse. In fact, because of his heavy blow, the battle between Zoro and Kuina was interrupted. Seeing that the two people's consultation should not be able to continue, Yamato decisively left the battlefield with a haha. In this regard, Kuina and Zoro can only feel helpless and have some small complaints, but they will not be annoyed by it. It is almost the trump card of all the imperial courts. They generally take care of them a lot for the younger generation, but Yamato has the best relationship among them. After all, the rest of the aces are either Mihawk and Lafitte who don't talk much, or Guillaume's more ordinary elder relationship, or Hancock who only sees Moda in Ishin. Only Yamato can play with them without putting on airs. Looking at the few people who also closed their hands and turned to leave, Luffy woke up and covered his head, enduring the still painful injuries on his body, and stood up forcefully, ready to shout again. The next 10 quarters was stopped by Rayleigh. "It's not a wise move to be brave." Rayleigh looked at Luffy. "Now you should be able to feel how far you and the whole team are from this new world's top force." Luffy was silent, and fell down again. Chopper on the side also came back to his senses, quickly came to Luffy's body, checked him, and said in surprise, "Okay. What a strange situation. It seems that the wound on his body is not healing. Because the potion that Guy used earlier belongs to the unique life essence of the Flying Kingdom. Shiki explained. This essence has a powerful healing ability, and as far as I know, it was created by a person with the ability to heal fruit. It's amazing. Chopper couldn't help but marvel. As a doctor, he has a better understanding of the powerful healing power brought by this bottle of essence. But people from the Flying Kingdom, what a nuisance. Ah, I agree with that. Listening to Chopper's words, Sanji echoed. The reason why the companions were hurt is one, and the other reason is that the Flying General brought the Kingdom of Daughters and a large group of mermaids to the Kingdom of Flying, making men dreamland. This was a great blow to his young self, and it has made him envious and jealous for it until now. Shaking his head, and throwing this thought that doesn't fit the current atmosphere to the back of his mind, Sanji looked at Luffy, who had been silent and let Chopper check up and down, frowned and said, "Hey, Luffy, you won't really hit it." Luffy didn't look up, but a deep voice came slowly. Uncle Rayleigh is right, I'm really too weak. I'm too weak. Although he is very reluctant to admit this fact, whether it is that Junti or the even more terrifying Yamato, he understands how weak he is compared to these strong men. No one is born strong, even the giant race. Seeing this, Rayleigh began to speak, and at the same time automatically ignored Charlotte Linlin. Behind the strong, there are countless sweats shed. It is formed by the spirit of not being afraid of failure, not admitting defeat and not being discouraged 10 times. Luo Jia is like this, and the strongest flying general is even more like this. Could it be that after seeing your own weakness, you will give up saving your big brother, and even give up your dream? Listening to Rayleigh's rhetorical question, Luffy shook his head, and quickly firmed his mind. Of course not. I want to rescue Ace, and I want to become the Pirate King. The companions around him were also relieved to see their captain get out of the blow, and Rayleigh smiled with satisfaction. So seeing the gap between you and the top powerhouses, you must also realize that with your current strength, it is very difficult to survive in the new world, let alone compete with these powerhouses. Luffy was silent for a while, and immediately said firmly, Uncle Rayleigh, what about hockey? Please teach us. Of course. Rayleigh nodded. It's just that how much you can learn these days depends on you. Is it difficult to get started with hockey? Hughes couldn't help asking. Considering Luffy and Enel's experience with knowledgeable sex, he thought it would be easier. It's hard to say. Some people can get started in a few months, while others can master it in a few weeks. But really, I want you to spend 2 years on the basics of hockey, Rayleigh said. 2 years. The rest of the people couldn't help but be surprised when they heard the year. After all, this time is really too long, not to mention that it is mainly for basic learning. Hockey's skills are also advanced. Rayleigh explained. The advanced armed color can destroy from the inside out, and the advanced knowledge color can listen to people's memories and even see the future. The same is true for Conqueror's hockey. The higher level method is called Conqueror's winding. Those who master this kind of technique are often the most powerful people. Rayleigh said and looked at Luffy. Yamato, who fought with you earlier, used this attack method. The most important thing to master the advanced level of hockey is a solid foundation. Only by using hockey freely and learning these higher level skills can we get twice the result with half the effort. Everyone in the Straw Hats nodded humbly, and Luffy also secretly kept the 2-year basic time in his heart. How many people in the Flying Kingdom have mastered the Conqueror's entanglement? Enel asked, already taking the Flying Kingdom as an imaginary enemy to compete with, so naturally the situation of the so-called strongest cannot be ignored. Let's keep 5. Shiki Kaido on the side. Tear. Everyone gasped involuntarily. Shiki also expressed his understanding of the changes in everyone's expressions. After all, he also had similar expressions when collecting information. A strong man who owns conquerors and achieves entanglement can become the sole overlord of the sea as long as he goes to sea, not to mention that this is the embodiment of the king's temperament. So when she knew the level of the Flying Kingdom, it was hard for her to believe and understand. Boom. Located in the illegal civilian street on the 21st. A figure covered in blood, like a cannonball, was directly smashed into several houses. There was a loud bang, and large pieces of debris were swept away along with the smoke. This is the lawless area of the Sabaody archipelago, and most of the people who mix in it are villains such as pirates and robbers. There were usually quite a few fights and noises, but such a violent noise still made people on the street startled by this sudden scene. Hey, isn't that guy a lot of Capone beige? One of this year's supernovas. Among the ruins where the smoke and dust dispersed, the unconscious figure lying in it was directly recognized by the people on the street. As this year's super rookie, his popularity in the first half is naturally not small. It's true. Hey, it's a lie, who can make this guy so embarrassed? When the people on the street were astonished, they couldn't help turning their heads to look at the position where Capone was flying before he was beaten, as if they wanted to see who could make this well-known supernova look like this. I saw a tall, long-legged young woman with a very good figure walking slowly in red high-heeled shoes through the holes in the wall. Many people were surprised by the scene in front of them, but someone else recognized something. Their pupils shrank suddenly, as if they saw some terrifying monster, and they backed away in fear. No way. How could she be here? This guy is the royal court of the Flying Kingdom. Ice Storm Junti. A terrified voice came from nowhere, announcing the name of the young woman. Immediately afterwards, all the people on the street, whether civilians or pirates, all opened their mouths in horror and looked at them in disbelief. This is the new world's top powerhouse with a bounty of 500 million Baileys. Especially as a member of the imperial court, the strongest man in the new era, Moda. The name of a person, the shadow of a tree. Just thinking of the flying general made everyone's bodies tremble involuntarily, and their faces turned pale visibly, as if their fear had reached the verge of death. In an instant, it was like a riot scene. Everyone on the street fled in panic. But ignoring these people, holding the samurai sword she chose because of pursuing Lord Moda, Runti slowly walked up to Capone Beige and slashed out. The sharp cold air that had already covered the whole body shot out from the blade in an instant, directly freezing the unconscious prey into ice sculptures, announcing the completion of the capture plan. The next day, the news that Moda's imperial court cadres appeared in the Saboti archipelago and captured the supernova Capone Beige, as the news bird flew to the sea again, caused a shock. The cloud of war has already enveloped the entire sea. And in such a sensitive and turbulent period, as the symbol of the strongest man today, Moda's every move will attract most people's attention. Even if it's just its signature royal court fan, it's the same. Especially on the Saboti archipelago, not far from Marineford. Therefore, the sudden move in this war has even more attracted the attention of the guest forces on the sea. Especially Marine, who is currently preparing for battle. The world government from the higher-level organization has launched Cypher Pol to investigate. Naturally, Stussy was also the first to receive the task, but the result of is just the result of taking a fancy to Capone Beige. But it is just for a fruit, to be caught specially, and it happens to be in a particularly sensitive area like the Saboti archipelago in the near future. Obviously that wasn't the answer the executives wanted, but the 5 elders didn't have any doubts about Stussy either. After all, this is an espionage officer specially trained by them since childhood. To celestial dragons and world government, there is absolutely no need to think about the degree of loyalty. In addition to the useful information that came from time to time after Stussy broke into Moda's inner circle, it should not be a lie. This also makes the world government think deeply, and at the same time makes people investigate the fruits of Capone Beige. Whether it is suspicion or assumption, if the other party suddenly causes trouble in the Saboti archipelago, everything must be prepared for everything. The pressure then came to Marine. Marlene Vando, Naval Headquarters Building. After hanging up the phone bug from 5 elders, Sengoku held his forehead with some headache. Just for a fruit, these words are placed on Moda, so how could he believe it? The question of the air general can only be put aside for the time being. The most important thing at present is how to effectively win a clear and good victory in the upcoming war. This war is of great significance. We must win an absolute victory and give justice to the residents of the world. Sengoku crossed his hands in front of him, and looked at all the marine elites present. Of course, at the same time, we must make sufficient preparations to prevent other forces from taking the opportunity to intervene in this war. When the marine elites heard the words, they also looked ready. They also know that this war determines the future direction. Time flies. There are less than 3 days until the public execution. New World, Flying Kingdom, located in the scientific research base of the City of Generals, the giant gate specially made by Seastone opened towards both sides. After the correct identity check and the certification of the holographic projection technology was opened, Robin leisurely walked towards the deepest secret area. After technological progress and further expansion and renewal, in the huge laboratory covering tens of thousands of meters, one by one, which can be called the most sophisticated scientific research machine in the world, is placed in the central area. More conspicuously, there are hundreds of closed-eyed BIGMOM legions operating in the huge testing ground. The final product of technological machinery is the combined product of mobilizing bloodline factors and souls, each of which has the ability to use devil fruit and even hockey. Before coming, there had already been a handover of tasks, so after Robin arrived at the test site, Comps had been waiting for a long time to come forward to receive him. These are the 2 items that Lord Moda said. After Robin greeted the country's current chief scientist, he immediately presented the required items for the mission. Ignoring the ice sculptures that had already been shipped back to China, Comps took over the design drawings of Pluton handed over by Robin with great interest. He flipped through a few pages first, and then he seemed excited as if he had found the answer he needed. "Will it work, Doctor?" Robin asked. With this information, I can be very sure. Comps nodded and replied. After getting the answer, Robin didn't plan to stay here any longer, so as not to disturb the other party, and turned to leave. After watching the other party leave, Comps also ordered his assistants to take Capone Beige to the instrument, and he still performed the fruit rebirth operation. After reacquiring the fruit of the strong city and handing it over to the assistant for arrangement, Comps couldn't wait to walk towards the holographic mirror in the laboratory. Combining the function of transporting fruit, Comps quickly moved from the Flying Kingdom at an altitude of 1,000 meters to the underground base where the original Wano Kuni land was located. It was a huge underground structure room extending to tens of thousands of meters. Among them, one can conspicuously see a gigantic monster that looks like a steel behemoth. The number of times he has come here is no less than 100 times, and every time he enters here, Comps will be shocked by the products in front of him. It looked like a battleship, like a product of the super generation. The whole body is painted black, and it is constructed of mysterious metal-like and non-metallic materials at the same time. There are countless gun barrels on the hull of the huge battleship, densely packed. Just one glance makes people feel shuddering. Of course, the most eye-catching thing is the huge gun muzzle extending from the bridge, which is nearly 1,000 meters long. Just by looking at it, people can clearly feel the image of their own tiny ant compared to it. Ancient weapon, Pluton. The most powerful and evil warship in the world, with ancient war weapons that can destroy an island with one shot. Shish. Seeing the arrival of Comps, Guy, who had been fascinated by Pluton's terrifying destructive power recently, also flew over slowly. Soon, he noticed the design drawings in Comps' hands, and became excited. Did you get the design drawings? Of course, and some difficult fonts. Robin also translated them. Comps shook the blueprint in his hand, making Guy turn his head following his movements. Since that's the case, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and try to see if you can steal the technological information in it, Guy said excitedly. After a general inspection of Pluton's situation, the ultra-ancient civilization technology represented in it has caught the attention of scientists like them. Whether it is practical or advanced, it is far beyond this era. It's hard to believe that these are the products of hundreds of years ago. Therefore, if it is possible to extract and analyze various advanced technologies, and then achieve secondary creation, it will definitely bring the war technology of the Flying Kingdom to a new peak. Time, day by day. As Marine and Whitebeard mobilized more and more troops, the shadow of war gradually shrouded the entire new world. Even people who don't pay much attention to the external situation can be bewildered at this time, and there is an extremely depressing and suffocating atmosphere in the air. It seems that dark clouds are pressing down on the city, and a heavy rain is coming. Time, there is still one day before the public execution day. Somewhere in the New World thousands of kilometers away, this is the G17 branch where the Marines fought here after the conscription era. The east is bright and the belly is white, and the morning sun is shining on the sea. As the sun climbed higher and higher, the situation on the island where the G17 branch was located gradually became clearly visible. Located at the port, there are two large warships docking on the shore. The elite Marines selected by countless branches are also rushing to the warship at this moment, ready to go to the Holy Land of Marines, Marineford. Marine Vice Admiral Dota Roland, who was sitting in the branch here, looked at the soldiers who were constantly preparing, and then at the adjutant next to him. I will trouble you here later. Although as Rear Admiral, it should go to Summit War, but the Marine branch of the New World is equally important, and the adjutant travels without a wife. This is the benefit of increasing the strength of troops after the world conscription. The adjutant saluted to show his acceptance, just in time. The inexplicable depressive atmosphere has impacted from overseas to the port of the branch. The sea wind suddenly swept violently, and the fluttering Marine flag shook violently, as if trying to tear apart the railings. Immediately, Marine climbed up to the gazebo and looked at the front line in the distance. In the line of sight, one can faintly see the traces of large ships through the white mist. Not long after, the signature whale appearance was revealed. That's Whitebeard's main ship, the Moby Dick. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. After the Moby Dick appeared from the white fog, dozens of huge pirate ships silently appeared in the sea fog. Looking from a distance, it is almost a continuous piece, like an ancient giant beast crawling on the sea, and an invisible sense of terror and oppression blows towards the face. Oh my God! The watchman's young Marine ensign saw the scene in the distance clearly, and subconsciously took half a step back in an instant. Even the hands holding the binoculars began to tremble slightly. Immediately afterwards, he shouted in a terrified tone, "It's the Whitebeard pirates." What? When the branch vice admiral heard the words, his face immediately changed, and he hurriedly took the binoculars from the adjutant's hand and looked overseas. In an instant, the body also began to tremble slightly, and the nervousness and uneasiness could not be concealed at all. Marine is at war with Whitebeard, and the purpose of the other party's appearance here can be imagined. Their branch is currently the farthest from naval headquarters in New World, and because of the Summit War, the admirals who often patrol are not nearby. Everyone evacuate. Branch Vice Admiral Dodoran immediately issued the most accurate order loudly. The dozens of pirate ships alone are not something their branch can defend, not to mention the voice standing on the white whale, but that Whitebeard. Just at the sound of an order. Boom. I saw Whitebeard clenched his hands, and then slammed to both sides. This action seemed to hit the hearts of all the Marines directly, making their beating hearts tremble. And the scene after that made their heartbeats seem to stop. Crack. Crack. Whitebeard knocked on both sides, and fine cracks appeared in the air, spreading continuously. Huge movements erupted quickly on the sea surface, and waves of huge waves overlapped and surged. Clatter. The sea surface was choppy, and the water level was rising rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. One after another terrifying big waves appeared on the sea level, pushing the waves towards the marine branch ahead at an alarming speed. In an instant, 2 tsunamis with a height of 1,000 meters formed, overwhelming the sky and blocking out the sun. With a roar, the island and even the fleeing warship were directly covered, and sank directly back to the turbulent sea. The incident happened within half a day. Naval Headquarters, Marineford. At a glance, the sea is full of white sails, and 100 marine warships are assembled here on a large scale, arranged in a wing shape, majestic and magnificent. At this time, in the marshal's office, Sengoku was angrily smashing his desk, and his words were full of cursing towards Ribbard. And in the meeting room where the Shichibukai were entertained, the Shichibukai who had received the convening order obviously learned a general idea from the marine who was stationed nearby. At this time, except for Jinbei who refused to participate in the war and was imprisoned in Imperton again, the remaining 6 Shichibukai had arrived separately. Blackbeard Teach, Sea Rogue Doflamingo, Tyrant Big Bear, Gecko Moria, Badrink Bardock, Edward Wable. It seems that Whitebeard is also angry, chatting. Really looking forward to the arrival of Summit War. Sitting cross-legged on the round table, Doflamingo laughed. Immediately afterwards, he glanced at the 5 people present, and his eyes fell on Teach and Wable, because these 2 were the most involved with Whitebeard. Thief ha ha ha. When Dad is angry, it's very scary, Blackbeard laughed while eating pizza. You're the real culprit, it's a shame you dare to come. Moria glanced at Blackbeard who was enjoying the food. After all, the most dangerous place is also the safest place, Blackbeard said Kaido indifferently. Humph. At this moment, Wable, who was also eating and drinking at the side, said naively, "What father, I am obviously Whitebeard's real son, and I will kill all those fakes when they arrive." Thief haha. Then I'm really looking forward to it. Blackbeard Teach looked at Wable. He had followed his father for 20 years, but he had never heard of Wable being such a #1 person. But it is undeniable that the opponent is really strong. Even Haki, who is as famous as Black Arm, can forcibly disable one arm of the opponent. He really has the terrifying strength of his father when he was young. But if it's about strength, he wouldn't be so afraid now. However, this guy seems to have some flaws in IQ. If he is pulled into his own camp, the future of the hegemony will be even clearer. Looking at this guy with well-developed limbs and a simple mind, Blackbeard began to think about paying attention. After one day, the time has officially come to Fire Fist, Ace's Public Execution Day. This day is destined to be remembered by the world. After the apex event between Flying General and BIGMOM, the top-level war that has not been seen for several years is about to start again. Regardless of the ending or not, the balance of the world will inevitably be determined today. Huge mangrove trees rise into the sky, with luxuriant branches and leaves. Countless bubbles fly from the island, and under the sunshine, they shine with colorful light, like a dream. Sabodi Archipelago is located on the largest square in the island. There is a huge video screen specially set up by the Marine as a display of public executions. Crowded, tens of thousands of people gathered here, waiting for the war to start. 9 in the morning. There are only 3 hours left before Fire Fist, Ace's public execution time. Countless pirates, reporters, and civilians gathered in it. The emotions of anticipation, excitement, anxiety, and fear are countless. With a soft sound, the video phone worms set up on the square opened their eyes at the same time. Beams of light radiated from their eyes, and gathered together, the Riddau building was formed in the air. Zzz. After the snowflakes flashed for a moment on the huge 3-sided display screen, the picture suddenly became clear, causing the large crowd gathered below to instantly boil. Hey, look, there is a picture. It's time, is the live broadcast finally going to start? After waiting for so long, it's finally here. The picture of naval headquarters clearly appeared in front of everyone when the live broadcast equipment was turned on. This, quite a few people exclaimed in amazement, causing widespread shock. The image reflected on the screen is the scene of naval headquarters. Shockingly, it was the dark mass of Marine soldiers gathered in the square, completely covering an island-like wide square, completely occupied by several figures. In terms of the number of troops, it is shocking just by looking at it, not to mention that the headquarters are all the elite of the Marines of the four seas. Among them, the most inferior Marine is also several times as hard as the ordinary branch Marine. For a moment, the image of Marine's might and invincibility flooded deeply into his heart. The screen changed. The image worm pulled back from the distant view to the close view. The dark area in front is actually the people wall, formed by the elite Marines of the headquarters. Looking around, it is a grand occasion with more than 100,000 people. Immediately afterwards, the summoned 7 warlords of the sea appeared on the screen, and the 6 Shichibukai stood on the high platform of the human wall, as a barrier to defend Whitebeard on the battlefield. After that, there are the core elites, from Rear Admiral, Vice Admiral, to the 4 admirals at the bottom of the execution platform. Green Bull, Kizaru, Akainu, Aokiji. The marine monsters that frighten the pirates are only the appearance of 4 admirals, and they are the people who let the whole world watch the public execution, and their hearts are agitated. What's more, at the highest point of the execution platform, Marine Hero Garp and Marine Marshal Sengoku are standing straight on the execution platform. This is the first time that the Marines' terrifying combat power under conscription is fully displayed in front of the whole world. Being able to make naval headquarters put up such a lineup to parry is enough to show the importance attached to the Whitebeard pirates. In an instant, with the impending execution and war, everyone's emotions surged wildly. A chilling atmosphere enveloped this island. Click, click. The sound of the iron chain was especially clear in the extremely quiet and solemn atmosphere. At this moment, Ace, the protagonist of this incident, was pressed to the execution platform by several executioners, and let him kneel directly in front of everyone in humiliation. At this moment, all the Marines present and the watching people from all over the world realized that something serious was about to happen. Before Whitebeard arrived, Marshal Sengoku stepped towards the front of the execution platform, holding a radio phone bug, and made the final mobilization for the upcoming summit war. There is one thing I must first convey to you. About today, this public execution is of great significance to world peace. When Sengoku said these words, all the Marines in the square harbor looked towards the execution platform. People watching in the world were also attracted by Marshal Sengoku's actions. Under the circumstances that can be said to be the focus of attention, Sengoku shouted with dignity, "Ace, report your father's name." "My father is Whitebeard," Ace said calmly with his eyes closed. "Wrong. There is nothing wrong. My father, there is only Whitebeard." As if touching Ace's inner defense line, the voice turned into a yell. And Sengoku no longer cares about Ace, the effect he wants has been achieved. Immediately afterwards, Sengoku revealed a series of traction consequences, except that after covering up the search incident and Garp's behavior at that time, he revealed Ace's identity step by step. "Your mother exceeded our expectations. She conceived a baby for 20 months before it was born. The most evil bloodline in the world was born. It is you, Potter Cass D. Ace." Sengoku said loudly and indisputably, "Your father was never Whitebeard. It was One Piece Gore D. Luo Jia." The significance of this execution is not only to defeat the great pirate Whitebeard, but also to completely eradicate the evil blood left by One Piece, and end the so-called era of great pirates. As soon as this remark came out, the whole world was in an uproar. Immediately afterwards, like a planet hitting the Earth, everyone's heads seemed to be exploded by this information, and they couldn't help but scream out of fear. Sengoku also finished his speech. He could predict that with the spread of the video phone bug, the world must have boiled over it, and at the same time there are Marines who are more determined below. As expected, Sengoku's goal of mobilization has also been achieved, and the morale of the huge Marine has been pushed to the top. Almost all Marines realized that the justice behind them made them must win this battle. Just in time, the sudden oppressive atmosphere hit Marlene Vatican from outside the port. It seemed to indicate that some terrible guy was coming. The sea breeze was blowing violently, and the fluttering Marine flag shook violently, as if trying to tear apart the railings. Is that guy finally here? Feeling this change in the aura, Sengoku's expression also changed slightly. This is an environmental change influenced by the conquerors, and only the strongest in Whitebeard can possess such a terrifying haki. All Marines look out to sea. In the eyes, in response to the change of the atmosphere, one after another pirate ships appeared at the end of the sea level. There are more than 40 ships, forming a huge pirate fleet, which also includes tens of thousands of terrorist forces, heading towards naval headquarters aggressively. With such an all-out war situation, many Marines on the front line couldn't help swallowing nervously. Those are the large fleet of the Whitebeard pirates, Wandering Knight, Doma, Great Eddie Spider, Skyad, Ice Witch, Whitebee, Lei Ching, Maku Gai, Brother Durkaban. All of them are captains who are well known in the New World and famous all over the world. Has all the large fleet under Whitebeard's command arrived? Marine, as well as the audience in front of the broadcast screen, were all shocked looking at the frightening fleet of ships. After the resounding names were reported one by one, everyone felt the sudden pressure in the arena. Woo! Woo! Marlene Fando, the harsh sirens also spread throughout the island with the appearance of the enemy. I found the enemy. It's the pirates under Whitebeard. The sound of the communication resounded, raising the vigilance of all Marines to the highest level. But soon, the frontmost sentry noticed something was wrong, because the large fleet came, and the most important figure of the Moby Dick did not appear. At this time, Gulu Gulu, in the Crescent Bay, a huge shadow emerged, and at the same time, along with the bubbles continuously rising from the bottom of the sea to the surface of the sea, there were pulsating sounds. Just like the sign of the Sea Kings breaking out of the sea, it is obvious that there is something huge below that is about to break through from the bottom of the sea. Sengoku's face also changed because he realized something. Whitebeard, did you actually invade so close? Finally, as in the Sengoku port, under the shocking and unexpected gaze of countless people, the Moby Dick, which was wrapped in bubbles in the coated layer, jumped out of the water just like that, setting off layers of water droplets, and directly causing rain to the inner bay. Case. Breaking into the port from the bottom of the sea, directly let Sengoku and Crane deploy a large number of warships around Marineford, doing useless work. At the same time, the 17 captains of the Whitebeard pirates also appeared on the deck. Without giving a chance to react, in the blink of an eye, 3 large pirate ships with the same whalehead appeared one after another on the bottom of the sea, protecting the Moby Dick. Accompanied by the crescent-shaped pirate skull flag in the wind, countless people shouted in horror. White! The Whitebeard pirates have invaded the bay. Everyone's eyes turned to the bay, and so did Ace on the legendary Moby Dick. Immediately. When? The knife leaned on the ground and made a crisp sound, which spread throughout the entire bay port. Everyone held their breath, even Marine and Admiral sat up slightly. Everyone in the square looked at the tall and stalwart figure who walked onto the deck. No need to introduce too much appearance, just look at the iconic white crescent hook mustache, you can recognize who this symbol means. Gu la 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 la, my silly son, have you suffered? How are you doing now? The bold laughter spread throughout the venue. The vigor revealed in that voice also makes everyone terrified. The strongest man ever, owner of Shock Fruit, Whitebeard, Edward Newgate. And with the appearance of Whitebeard, the Summit War finally kicked off. Thief, ha ha ha. Dad, we finally meet again. Looking at the figure, Teach couldn't help but whispered. Because there was no dark fruit, and he didn't have much confidence to deal with Magellan's troublesome and terrifying toxin, so Blackbeard didn't go to Impel down this time, but stayed in naval headquarters honestly. Although he couldn't win over the evil bosses to supplement his power, he looked at Wable beside him and smiled. It's not bad to witness the end of the father with his own eyes. The port location of Marineford, click. Under everyone's shocking eyes, Whitebeard, who had just finished greeting Ace and had a conversation with him, sneered. The arms full of muscles crawled out with blue veins, and then hammered heavily on the air. In an instant, there was a crisp sound like a broken mirror. Under the hammering of Whitebeard, the atmosphere in front of him suddenly appeared cracks like spider webs, spreading in all directions. If you bully Lousy's son, you have to make up your mind, bastard Marines. Soon, under Whitebeard's seaquake, the water level on both sides of naval headquarters continued to rise. In the end, a turbulent and monstrous wave was set off, converging into a 1,000-meter tsunami, and smashing towards naval headquarters mercilessly like covering the sky and covering the sun. Is that Whitebeard's power? Not only the soldiers on naval headquarters were stunned by Whitebeard's move. The audience watching this live broadcast were even more shocked by Whitebeard's history. This is the strength that the strongest man in the world can show. For this reason, he couldn't help thinking about how terrifying it would be to defeat Whitebeard with such strength, the strongest flying general in existence today. But not long after this idea was born, someone stepped forward to defuse Whitebeard's terrifying blow immediately. With the help of strong and skilled physical skills, Admiral Aokiji instantly came to the high altitude of the tsunami on both sides. Opening his hands expressionlessly, 2 streams of cold air burst out directly from his hands, attacking the tsunami. Brush, just for a moment. The tsunami, together with all areas in the bay, were immediately covered with ice. By doing so, it is possible to avoid Whitebeard from continuing to set off a tsunami to the greatest extent. But this also created an excellent foothold for the next war. Looking at Admiral who was bombarded by Dad's punch and returned to the wide area bay. Countless pirates shouted and began to swarm up, stepping on the ice, and throwing towards the Marine at the port. Down with Whitebeard. Rescue Ace. Almost at the same time, both sides erupted the call. The war started, the sound of countless fighting, and the sound of artillery fire resounded in the bay. Sengoku keeps his eyes on the battlefield. His role as the general of the army is more about controlling the overall situation than fighting. And unexpected events often come suddenly. Sengoku's adjutant quickly walked to the execution platform to report. The news immediately made Sengoku's pupils shrink sharply. Kaido, one of the 4 emperors, appeared in Earthquake, not far from Marineford. Damn it. Did these unstable factors really appear? Sengoku couldn't help but gritted his teeth. In fact, a few days before this date, he learned of Kaido's premeditated move through government agencies. Sengoku and Crane also worried about this, but they were a little relieved when they learned that the Red Hair took the initiative to prevent Kaido's next move. Knowing such a situation, it is obvious that Kaido has broken through the barrier of the Red Hair, and even the latter may follow in this war. Especially when he learned that Ace was his former captain's son, he didn't know what Red Hair would do because of it. Just thinking about it gave Sengoku a headache. For this war that must be won, it seems necessary to start planning in advance. Thinking so, Sengoku picked up Marine's phone number. The battle for naval headquarters is in full swing, going on. And on the sea area still some distance away from naval headquarters, Kaido's transformed dragon is stopping at the cloud layer above 10,000 meters. At the same time, at its huge dragon head, Moda is sitting leisurely on it. Because of the use of dark abilities and the effect of killing knowledge, neither the Marine nor the world government has captured it. In addition to the famous Qinglong in New World, there are also 10 dragon kings who also descended this time. No problem, just bring one is enough. It was as if Shen Lei's voice sounded in the clouds. Although he couldn't see Moda above his head at this time, he pointed out that it was the Linlin that Moda brought along with him. Don't worry, after owning the fortified city fruit, it becomes the entire legion. Moda smiled and continued. Also, the really interesting scenes don't stop there, but for now, let's let the 2 of them hang out for a while. Kaido snorted softly and didn't say anything else. Moda looked at the live video bug in his hand, paying attention to the full view screen specially made by Stussy and Carter. In the video worm, the battle between the Whitebeard Regiment and the Marine has also entered a state of intense heat. Justice shall prevail. A Marine roared, his voice was like thunder, resounding through the sky, boosting morale, and at the same time, he slashed at the pirate with the sword in his hand. And the Whitebeard pirates naturally shouted without showing weakness. Kill Marine. Get Ace out. Thousands of pirates have not received special training, but their voices are as powerful as a rainbow, and they are conveyed to every companion. One by one, they jumped off the pirate ship, set up their cannons, raised their swords, and rushed towards Marine. Dense figures overlapped each other. There were flashes of swords and shadows, and the sound of cannons continued. For the people who watched the war from all over the world, everyone couldn't help but jump up with fear. As if they were on the battlefield, just the aura of the hedge was enough to make them fall. The battle inside the bay was extremely fierce, and the same was true outside the bay. With the approach of dozens of pirate ships under their command, they couldn't separate their minds and combat power to support the personnel in the bay. Bombard. Sink those nasty pirate ships. A Marine general stood at the fort, constantly commanding. With the elite strength of their headquarters, coupled with their advantages in numbers and terrain, the victory in this war definitely belongs to them. As long as there are no accidents. Report, a ship has been spotted in the distance. Suddenly, there was a shout from the observation deck. The general immediately gritted his teeth and asked, Whitebeard's pirate team came to support again? It doesn't seem to be. Lookout Marine quickly replied, it's a lion-headed pirate ship, and the flag seems to be the Straw Hat Pirates who are supernovas this year. When the general heard this, he immediately ordered to attack. It doesn't matter, as long as they are pirates. Let them all be sunk. On the Thousand Sunny going forward at this time. Ace, you must be fine. Luffy clenched his fists and said to himself nervously, I will definitely save you. Don't worry. Your former big brother will definitely be saved. Usopp on the side patted Luffy and said comfortingly. Although he was still trembling with fear, since he came here, it meant that everyone present had made a decision. Yeah. Luffy nodded heavily, then looked at his companions gratefully. Call out. There was the sound of artillery bombardment in the distance, followed by countless black shells, all flying towards this side. Although there are many unknown pirate ships ahead, most of them are attacking them. Holding the technology stick in his hand, Enel immediately jumped into the air and swept across the air, intercepting all the shells in the air. It looks like we've been discovered. As Brooke said, he slowly drew the saber out of his hand, as if preparing to fight. Now it's time to think about how to get in. This bay is full of marines. Sanji smoked a cigarette, blocking the shells while observing the general situation of the battlefield. Then fly in directly. Lou made a decision directly, and shouted at the same time, Frankie. Oh. The Coca-Cola energy has been replenished. Hearing the conversation between the two, Hughes and Usopp also changed their expressions, and immediately shouted in a panic. Hey, Luffy, wait. Are you really planning to carry out that plan? Wind to blast launch. Before he could finish his strokes, he only heard Luffy's shout, and violent coke spray paint burst out from the stern of the ship behind thousands of miles of sunshine, directly driving the ship to swing the gravity, rushing into the air and flying towards the ice surface 1 kilometer ahead. Don't There were bursts of wailing and crying. The shadows brought by the flying ships also attracted the attention of the inner combatants. Hey, what's flying by? Whose ship is that? Hey! They rushed directly to the area inside the bay. It's about to hit, hurry up. Get out of the way. Boom. Boom. 1,000 miles of sunshine crashed into the ice, trembling violently, and gliding for a long distance. And it just so happened that the place to stop was the nearby 6 of Whitebeard's main ship, the Moby Dick.